Chapter 2368. Joining hands to finish the sword. Wu Ming pulled a long face. He had never fought against Tianrua Jian before. Tianrua Jian was like the legendary Cassiopeia. His Cassiopeia sword could mess with time and space. One sword sufficed to kill all enemies. Fighting against such people was too terrifying. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about remaining alive. One small mistake, and one could die against Cassiopeia sword attacks. And everything happened too fast. A moment before, if the sword hadn't reached his chest but his third eye, Wu Ming would be dead already. Tianrua Jian, are you sure you want to protect Lin Feng? Wu Ming asked coldly. He was a high-level saint from the empty space shrine. He wanted to kill Lin Feng. And he wasn't the only one. Many of the shrines definitely wanted to kill Lin Feng. They couldn't let him escape. He had to die. As long as the master is here, nobody can attack him, or they'll have to fight against me first, replied Tianrua Jian sharply, firmly holding his sword. Nobody could compete with his sword attacks there, so killing Lin Feng would be extremely difficult. Little boy, come here, ignore them, said Weapon Master Bing to Lin Feng. Tianrua Jian looked at Lin Feng and smiled. It's an opportunity for you, go and focus. Leave the rest to me. All right, Lin Feng nodded. Master, please help me with my son too. Don't worry, if they dare touch your family members, I'll slaughter them, replied Tianrua Jian. Lin Feng walked over to Weapon Master Bing. Weapon Master Bing looked at Lin Feng and turned around. After a breath or two, an illusion appeared around them. The air became very calm, and only the two of them were there. Weapon Master Bing was firmly holding the sword with chains of fire. He said, a moment ago, everybody put strength in the sword, but your strength is different from other people. You don't just oppress it, you also try to keep it under control, and to fuse together with it. Your strength is very special. If I give you an opportunity, can you fully control the will and strength in the sword? Master, my strength is God's strength. I can control things better than other people. However, I'm not strong enough. The will and strength in that sword is terrifyingly powerful. I'm too weak. I can't control it with my own power, said Lin Feng. Weapon Master Bing nodded and said, I know. This strength is much more powerful than most people's strength here. Nobody can control it entirely. After all, the strength of those saints' bodies surprised me too. I have an idea. There are many kinds of strength and will in that sword. If you could slowly take control, you might be able to divide into several sorts of strength and sort them. We could proceed systematically. Make all the sorts of speed-related strengths fuse together to create extremely quick attacks. Then make all the soul-related strengths fuse together to create terrifying soul attacks. And so on and so on. Incredible idea. Lin Feng was amazed. This guy was really an expert. He understood all the mechanisms of the process. He wanted to create a sword with multiple types of attacks. Of course, Weapon Master Bing had that idea, because the saints' bodies contained different sorts of strengths. He was an extraordinary weapon maker. The sword would be extremely resistant to crafting because the materials were perfect. He had decided to make the sword publicly to see if anyone could help him make his idea come true. And in the end, he had chosen Lin Feng. Unfortunately, Lin Feng was a bit too weak. Weapon Master Bing wanted to break his record too. I would like to try, said Lin Feng. Weapon Master Bing just nodded. Alright, come and try. Lin Feng slowly rose up into the air in front of the sword. A powerful strength filled the air. He released his God strength and his own world strength, wanting to have it his own way. To control that sword, he needed to make the empty space in that sword become his own world. And then he needed to create his own celestial Tao inside. His strength infiltrated the sword. Weapon Master Bing's eyes twinkled. Suddenly, his strength was expelled from the sword. He wanted to help Lin Feng oppress the strength, but Lin Feng pushed him out. He was satisfied. If Lin Feng did that, it meant he had an idea. And as long as it worked, everything was fine. Weapon Master Bing was more than experienced enough to keep things under control, just in case. Lin Feng created his own world in the sword. Wind intent. That's speed intent there, and there's light intent. Lin Feng sensed the different sorts of intent in the sword. When saints died, there will remained, and will made things seem alive. When I find different threads of intent, which belong to the same category, or which are similar, I can make them fuse together with God's strength. That's exactly what Weapon Master Bing wants me to do, thought Lin Feng. His God's strength surrounded all the sorts of intent which were related to speed. Then he modified them, and made them fuse together with God intent. However, Lin Feng sensed something was resisting. The independent sorts of intent didn't just let him proceed. They didn't want to submit. Since you're in my world, you should submit, thought Lin Feng, his intent becoming even more powerful. A massive celestial Tao strength surrounded the independent sorts of intent. He fused them together with God intent. I can do it, he thought. Even though some sorts of intent were resisting, his God celestial Tao helped him force the different sorts of intent to submit. However, a few ones which were too powerful didn't submit. Those different sorts of intent could be compared with cultivators. If he brought cultivators who were much stronger than him into his own world, they could also break free easily. Lin Feng made a few sorts of intent fuse together, and then he took his strength out of the sword. He only left intent related to speed with his God strength inside. Master, look, he said to Weapon Master Bing. Weapon Master Bing nodded, and put his strength inside the sword. He looked pleasantly surprised and said, as expected, they fused together. They also contain some of your own intent. Other people can't control it, but that way when we finish making the sword, it'll have to be yours. It will be perfect for you, but not for other people. Lin Feng smiled. That's all I could do. But even if you didn't want to give me that sword, that's still all I could have done. Don't worry. All I'm concerned about is how powerful the sword is. I don't care about who the owner is. Otherwise, I wouldn't have given the Cassiopei's sword and the Supreme Yupek away, said Weapon Master Bing indifferently. If you want it, you can have it. Thank you very much, Master, said Lin Feng. He hadn't expected that, but he knew Weapon Master Bing did it wholeheartedly. He made weapons out of passion, not greed. But there's a problem because your intent is limited, therefore, I can't make a sword which is too powerful. I'll make it so that it adapts to your strength as you become stronger. We can join hands to make it adapt, said Weapon Master Bing to Lin Feng. He looked sharp. After having seen how strong Lin Feng was, he had an idea. As you wish, Master. Lin Feng was touched. With Weapon Master Bing's help, they could make a sword which would adapt to his strength. Lin Feng was excited now and couldn't wait to use it someday. Stay here for a time, we'll work on the sword, Weapon Master Bing said to Lin Feng. Lin Feng nodded. In the outside world, days passed. The people outside didn't leave though. A few days wasn't much for them. Their lives could last thousands, tens of thousands, and even more years. A few days were like an eye blink. Also, they really wanted to know why Weapon Master Bing had chosen Lin Feng. Did he want to make a sword for Lin Feng? Of course, for the members of the shrines, the most important thing remained to kill Lin Feng. Therefore, the number of people outside didn't decrease. On the contrary, it gradually increased because more and more people from shrines arrived. Chapter 2369. Weapon Master Bing's strength. Time passed. Lin Feng and Weapon Master Bing had already been working on the sword for 3 months. Lin Feng was seated cross-legged. There was a humming sword in suspension in the air above him. Lin Feng kept releasing God's strength into it. He was keeping it under control. Phew. Lin Feng took deep breaths, opened his eyes and smiled. How do you feel? Asked Weapon Master Bing, also opening his eyes. Lin Feng nodded and said to Weapon Master Bing, I feel like I can control some of its strength, but I can only use my own strength to control one sort of fused intent. Not bad already. When you become stronger, you'll manage to control more and more sorts of intent. The sword will become more and more powerful. Besides, you're the person that sword listens to now, Weapon Master Bing said. Lin Feng smiled. This sword was a bit like the Tianji sword. Back then, he had modified the Tianji sword, fusing together with it. Now he had fused together with this sword, and actually, it was similar to the Tianji sword because it contained different sorts of strength, 5 types. Back then, the Tianji sword contained different sorts of abstruse energies. But Lin Feng's God strength wasn't powerful enough yet. He could only control one sort of intent at a time. Of course, There were still many sorts of intent Lin Feng couldn't control inside that sword. He had to become stronger. There were 5 sorts of strength in that sword, and Lin Feng had made them fuse together with his own god strength. Weapon Master Bing had also included some of his power to enhance Lin Feng's understanding. Speed strength, heavy strength which made that each attack felt like billions of tons, soul strength to attack people's souls, illusion strength, and absorbing strength. The sword was like 5 swords, like 5 different saints' weapons. It was the result of Lin Feng and Weapon Master Bing's fruitful cooperation. Speed, power, soul, illusion, absorbing. Master, what should we call this sword? He asked Weapon Master Bing. He had just helped, and by a stroke of luck, he had become its master. But the one who had done most of the work was Weapon Master Bing. Supreme Yupek and Kasayapa have already been taken. Even though this sword is not as powerful as Supreme Yupek and Kasayapa yet, I hope it'll surpass them. You control God's strength. Let's call this sword God's sword, said Weapon Master Bing calmly. Lin Feng nodded and grabbed the sword. God's sword. I hope you'll meet Master Bing's expectations, whispered Lin Feng. The sword contained 5 sorts of strength, and even though it was not as powerful as the great demon halberd of desolation or other saints' weapons yet, it was much more suitable for Lin Feng than the great demon halberd of desolation because it contained his own god strength. He was the only one who could control it perfectly. With your talent in that sword you'll be fine, said Weapon Master Bing to Lin Feng. All right, we're done. You can leave. Thank you very much, Master. That sword is fit for a god. I won't tarnish your reputation, said Lin Feng, bowing before Weapon Master Bing. His figure flickered as he left that place. The crowd outside hadn't left though. When they saw Lin Feng come out, they stared at him. Besides, Weapon Master Bing had given Lin Feng a sword. When Lin Feng had gone in, he didn't have a sword. Now he had come out, and he had a sword. The sword Weapon Master Bing had made was now his. That little boy is lucky. Weapon Master Bing gave him a sword. Thought some people. The members of the shrines looked at him coldly, especially Wu Ming. That one's eyes were filled with murder, and his energies surged towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng was alert, and looked at them coldly. The shrines didn't intend to let him off. They wanted to kill him as soon as possible. Weapon Master Kong, Guzhu and Tian Ruojian hadn't left either. At that moment, they sensed all those deadly energies move towards Lin Feng. Tian Ruojian groaned coldly and said, "Shrines, you're really reckless. Today Lin Feng will definitely die," said someone calmly. It was the high-level saint of the fire shrine. He flashed forwards. Lin Feng had the impression he was going to burn alive. "Nobody can touch him here," said Tian Ruojian. His figure flickered, but all around him, everybody moved, encircling Lin Feng and releasing qi. They were all terrifying cultivators. This time, they wanted to kill Lin Feng, no matter what. "Insolent," said Weapon Master Kong, coldly glancing at the crowd. The shrines had a very high social position. They considered everybody and everything beneath their notice. They were like gods in the imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds. Weapon Master Kong also had a very high position in the imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds. Usually they never attacked one another. They wanted to kill Lin Feng because he was a forbidden person. But could they kill him here? Especially since he had received a sword from Weapon Master Bing? "The shrines are too arrogant," said someone at that moment. He was wearing a dragon robe and sounded furious. The saints were all astonished. What was going on? Why did the dragon clan get involved? If anyone tries to prevent us from doing what we have to do, we'll consider them enemies, returned Wu Ming coldly. She drove towards Lin Feng. He really had the impression he was going to die. At that moment, energies appeared in the vault of heaven and came crashing down. A terrifying oppressive strength descended from the sky. It was celestial Dao power, and it was awesome. "Who?" snarled Wu Ming, suddenly raising his head. A terrifying empty space strength rose up in the air. Golden lights blotted out the sky. "You're really disrespectful," said a voice. A gigantic figure appeared in the sky. "Weapon Master Bing." Wu Ming frowned in astonishment. What an ominous strength. Weapon Master Bing had turned into celestial Dao? He was celestial Dao itself? How incredible. "Last time, Tian Rua didn't kill you, But since you want to die, you will now, said Weapon Master Bing coldly. He crashed down from the sky. Wu Ming released as much empty space strength as he could, but the celestial Tao surrounded him. He felt petrified, and his body stiffened. He couldn't move anymore. That's empty space strength celestial Tao. Weapon Master Bing was extremely strong. He was using empty space strength against Wu Ming. Wu Ming struggled, but he felt paralyzed. A celestial Tao hand descended from the sky, and there was an explosion of energies meeting. The crowd saw Wu Ming's face disappear, turning into empty space lights. Wu Ming! The crowd was astonished and petrified. Was Wu Ming dead? He hadn't withstood a single attack from Weapon Master Bing? Who else wants to act arrogantly here? I'll kill them now, said Weapon Master Bing coldly. Everybody was frozen. Weapon Master Bing had remained silent the whole time before. Nobody knew how powerful he really was. At that moment, the atmosphere was completely silent. Chapter 2370. Stealing the sword. Lin Feng raised his head. He looked at that figure and shivered. How strong, how incredible. Wu Ming was as strong as Gu Zhu, who was also extraordinarily strong, but Weapon Master Bing had defeated him in one strike. What a difference. Those two people belonged to two different worlds. Gu Zhu can easily scare the lower-level saints of the Fire Shrine, but Weapon Master Bing can easily kill people who are as strong as Wu Ming and Gu Zhu. He's also a high-level saint, and there's a huge difference between them, thought Lin Feng. He realized that the more he progressed on the path of cultivation, the bigger the difference was between people of the same level. It all depended on people's talent and their understanding of time and celestial Tao. Saints had returned to the source. They had transcended worldliness. Many people thought that he was just a weapon maker. They hadn't thought that he had such an extraordinary strength too. The air was eerily quiet, their hearts were pounding. They were furious at Weapon Master Bing. But what could they say? He was the godly Weapon Master's disciple. They couldn't offend him. In the imperial court of the continent of the Nine Clouds, the godly Weapon Master was too powerful and influential. Why did you get involved? It has nothing to do with you, said someone indifferently. People turned to look. It was a saint of the Fire Shrine. You are not allowed to act recklessly here. It's not your territory, snarled Weapon Master Bing angrily. Since it's that way, we're off, said that person. But at that moment, there was a howl of flames. Zhetian! Lin Feng suddenly turned around and saw a gigantic fire hand shooting towards Zhetian. He couldn't protect himself and was caught instantly. Qiong Lin, said Lin Feng coldly. It was Qiong Lin, a high-level saint from the Fire Shrine. Since nobody was paying attention to him, he had decided to attack Zhetian. But Zhetian was just a celestial emperor. There was a huge level difference between them. If Qiong Lin wanted, he could kill Zhetian very, very easily. How shameless, shouted Weapon Master Kong, his expression changing drastically. The Fire Shrine has gone too far, shouted Gu Zhu. Don't worry, I won't kill him, said Qiong Lin indifferently. I'm a member of the Fire Shrine. I won't harm a little boy. The problem is Weapon Master Bing is getting involved in our things, and we don't want to be enemies with him. We're taking the little boy to Tianyin City. Lin Feng, if you want to see him, you can come to Tianyin City. Everybody, we're off, said Qiong Lin. The gigantic fire hand grabbed Zhetian, and they left as quickly as possible. Where are you doing? Shouted Weapon Master Bing furiously. She rolled in waves. Fireballs exploded and Qiong Lin disappeared from their field of vision. Weapon Master Bing was startled and spat. Deployment talisman. Lin Feng watched Zhetian's figure disappear with a long face. The Fire Shrine was truly shameless. Tianyin City was the capital city of the Fire Shrine. They had their headquarters there. If he went there, he'd definitely never leave. But if he didn't go, they'd keep Zhetian there forever. Goodbye. All the members of the shrines left. In the blink of an eye, everybody was gone. The shrines had already achieved part of their goal. Lin Feng clenched his fists hard enough to make his bones pop. The shrines wanted to kill him, and now they were even lashing out at his family members. The shrines are really great. Lin Feng was furious. His eyes were filled with murder. The shrines were at the top of the continent of the Nine Clouds, and they dared do such things? Lin Feng, Gu Zhu said to Lin Feng, don't worry. The Fire Shrine wants you. They won't kill Jetian. They just want to use him to threaten you. I know, replied Lin Feng coldly. The Fire Shrine had gone too far, though. They've gone too far. From now on, if I meet people from those shrines, I'll kill them instantly, said Lin Feng. His eyes were filled with murder. Gu Zhu was surprised, convinced Lin Feng would do just that. He was furious. The Fire Shrine has gone too far indeed. We can't leave the matter at that, said Tian Ruojian coldly. His eyes looked as sharp as swords. He was a sword cultivator. He had learned from the old Kasayapa. He was fearless, and had been merciless against Wu Ming, nearly killing him. He didn't care. At such a cultivation level, he didn't care about much anymore. But now the shrines had gone too far. Tianyin City is the capital city of the Fire Shrine. If I go there, they'll kill us. Even though Lin Feng was furious, he tried to keep calm. Tianyin City was the Fire Shrine's capital city. It was like Fortune City for the Fortune Shrine. The only solution there to save Jetian would be to sacrifice himself. They won't release him unless I die, muttered Lin Feng to himself. Indeed, the situation is very annoying. They have the advantage now, said Tian Ruojian frowning. The Fortune Shrine won't just stand there and watch, said the diviner at that moment. He gazed into the distance. He looked calm and composed, but on the inside he was furious. The Fire Shrine had gone too far. The Fire Shrine has been chasing our disciple for a long time. That's already way beyond what one can conceive. Lin Feng, I'll go to the Fortune Shrine. Wait for my message, said the diviner to Lin Feng. Lin Feng nodded. Thank you for your help. We're off, said the diviner. It wasn't about Lin Feng anymore. It was between the shrines now. So many years have passed, and the situation was peaceful. The outside world was tranquil and calm. There was a balance of power. The shrines forgot about the past. It's time for a good war. The imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds is going to be shaken again, said Weapon Master Bing, sighing. The imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds had been too peaceful for too long. Let's go back to the World Clan, said Gu Zhu to Lin Feng. I'll come with you, said Tian Ruojian. Gu Zhu nodded happily. Great, perfect. Tell me if you have news, said Weapon Master Kong. Lin Feng looked at those people and felt moved. Go. Suddenly, Lin Feng and the others rose up into the air. They had to go back to the World Clan to discuss things. The situation was critical. Their enemies were shrines. They started flying away. But Gu Zhu and Tian Ruojian glanced at one another and stopped. Someone is hiding. Come out. A strong wind started blowing. Dazzling golden lights flashed. A figure in golden clothes appeared, staring at Lin Feng coldly. Supreme Animal World, Rock Clan Zongan, said Tian Ruojian, looking at that person coldly. He looked as sharp as a sword, like he was trying to lacerate that person with his eyes. I want that sword, said Zongan. He was staring at Lin Feng's sword. Lin Feng was stunned. The members of the Rock Clan from the Supreme Animal World had always hoped Weapon Master Bing would make a sword for them. But he had never accepted. They hadn't forgotten about it, and now they wanted to steal Lin Feng's sword. It's not suitable for you, said Lin Feng. You don't know that. Give me the sword, said Zongan firmly. He was determined to steal the sword. Zongan, don't be too reckless. Weapon Master Bing made that sword for Lin Feng. Why would he give it to you? Said Tian Ruojian coldly. So what? Weapon Master Bing doesn't know how to recognize friends. He didn't want to cooperate with us. All I can do is steal that sword, said Zongan coldly. He was a beast, and beasts were aggressive and straightforward, especially Zongan. He was a great oriental greenfinch rock, a king among rocks. Shut up, said Tian Ruojian coldly. Sword intent filled the air. At the same time, there was a shrill cry and golden lights flashed as Zongan turned into a great oriental greenfinch rock, and then into 3. Rock Clan's cloning technique. Tian Ruojian was grim. Zongan would be a terrifying opponent. Chapter 2371. Blood Great Imperial City. The Rock Clan were speed experts, especially great oriental greenfinch rocks, who were the kings of the species. They had no competitor in terms of speed. Zongan had imperial rock blood, and he was a great oriental greenfinch rock, so he was incredible in terms of speed. On top of that, he had a special technique, which only the rock clan had, a rock cloning technique. When using it, his chi didn't change at all, so it was impossible to recognize which one was his real body. Of course, the clone's attacks weren't as powerful as his real ones, or it would have been even more terrifying. Now there were 3 rocks. Which one was the real one? It was difficult to come up with a plan knowing how fast they were. Tian Ruojian and Gu Zhu remained vigilant. Tian Ruojian, who was already holding his sword, said, Lin Feng, you stay behind. You have to be very careful. Zhonggan is extremely fast. When he reaches a certain speed, he can break free from the laws of space and time using the celestial space and time-breaking rock technique. Gu Zhu also took out his world scroll. Saints' energies emerged from their saints' weapons. Gu Zhu and Tian Ruojian were extremely strong, but there were 3 Zonggans facing them. They had to be extremely careful. Give me the sword, said Zonggan's 3 bodies at the same time. All his eyes looked extremely sharp. Haha, you little filthy bird. You shamelessly try to steal other people's weapons, said a voice in the distance. Zonggan was stupefied. Little filthy bird. He was a great oriental greenfinch rock, who dared talk to him that way. He gazed into the distance and saw someone wearing a dragon robe arrive. He wore an incredible helmet. He looked dignified and majestic, imposing and awe-inspiring. Ao Tsang Hai, shrilled Zonggan's 3 bodies at the same time. Longhorn snake, mind your own business, will you? What if I don't, little filthy bird? Said Ao Tsang Hai. He was from the dragon clan in the supreme animal world. Ao Tsang Hai took a step forwards and looked at Lin Feng. So you're Daimon, and initially you were Lin Feng. No wonder that Alma follows you everywhere. Initially people said Alma was your slave. I wanted to teach you a good lesson. I didn't know it was you. Lin Feng was surprised. Ao Tsang Hai had initially come to teach Lin Feng a good lesson and take Alma back. But now he knew Daimon was Lin Feng. And Lin Feng, back in the days, had asked Aoshi to bring Alma to the dragon clan. This little filthy bird is not strong enough, but he's really quick. If he does anything fishy, we're 3, so we can destroy his 3 bodies, Ao Tsang Hai said to Tian Ruojian and Gu Zhu. Even though he was talking about the great oriental greenfinch rock in a denigrating way, he knew perfectly well that Zonggan was extremely fast and strong. If Zonggan managed to find a way to reach Lin Feng, he'd be able to crush him. Ao Tsang Hai, swore Zonggan coldly. Now that Ao Tsang Hai was there, he had no chance anymore, even with his clones. Be careful, last descendant of the Dragon King, cawed Zonggan. Then his 3 bodies collapsed into 2, and then into 1, before he shot up into the sky and disappeared. How fast? Lin Feng was amazed. That was pure speed. With such a speed, he could attack enemies really quickly. It wasn't easy to fight against people like that. Last descendant of the Dragon King? Lin Feng was surprised. Was Ao Tsang Hai the last descendant of a Dragon King? He did have an imperial helmet. I wouldn't have thought the Dragon Prince would help, Gu Zhu said to Ao Tsang Hai. As Lin Feng had guessed, Ao Tsang Hai was a Dragon Prince. It's a slight effort. Dragons of darkness are rare. And Lin Feng brought one back to the Dragon Clan. We are very grateful, said Ao Tsang Hai. He looked at Lin Feng. You helped me once, I'll help you now. Is the young man the fire shrine kidnapped your son? Indeed, he is my son, Lin Feng confirmed. It'll be difficult to get him back from Tianyin City, even for the Fortune Shrine, unless they start a real war. You need another plan, said Ao Tsang Hai. What plan? Asked Lin Feng. A tooth for a tooth. He captured your kid. You must do the same to one of his family members, someone the fire shrine cares about a lot. Any idea who? Asked Lin Feng to Ao Tsang Hai. I know that he attaches great importance to someone called Qiongyu, who has a very special position in the fire shrine. If you capture him, he won't kill your son. Qiongyu, I've never heard of him, whispered Tian Ruojian. It's because you don't know much about shrines. I'm from the Dragon Clan. We know a lot about the shrines of the Imperial Court of the Continent of the 9 Clouds. Ao Tsang Hai smiled. What is his cultivation level, and where is he? Asked Gu Zhu to Ao Tsang Hai. Dozens of years ago he became a saint. He's much stronger now. Considering his talent, I'd say he must be a low-level saint now. His fighting abilities must be terrifying. I've heard that he was about to go to one of the 7 forbidden territories, the godly grave. If you hurry, you can still catch up with him, replied Ao Songhai. Gu Zhu and Tian Ruojian were startled. Xiongyu wanted to go a forbidden territory. They had to act fast. Xiongyu wants to go to the godly grave. Lin Feng's eyes gleamed. Ao Songhai continued. We could do it like this. I take Lin Feng with me, we look for Xiongyu, but I can't help because the relationship between the shrines and the dragon clan would deteriorate, and that would make things worse. You can send someone else with us. Of course, you can also go to Tianyin City. We can act on all sides. Lin Feng understood him. The relations between some clans of the supreme animal world and the imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds were complex. Xiongyu was a very important member of the fire shrine, and Ao Songhai was a prince. If he did anything to Xiongyu, then a war would start between the fire shrine and the dragon clan. Also, Lin Feng, you must think carefully. If you do anything to Xiongyu, it will be a point of no return, warned Ao Songhai. Point of no return? Lin Feng's eyes shone. The fire shrine had been trying to kill him for a while, because he had a forbidden body. They had tried all they could to kill him, as if he didn't matter. But now they had kidnapped Zhetian. He just wanted to slaughter them all. The shrines wanted to kill him, so he wouldn't hesitate and kill all the members of those shrines who wanted to kill him. He wanted to do that until he died, or until he stood upon their ruins. Since Xiongyu is so important to the shrines, there might some extremely strong cultivators on his side, so I'll stay with you and Lin Feng. Gu Zhu, go back to the World Clan, and talk to the Fortune Shrine. See what you can do together, said Tian Ruojian. They had to do things carefully. Failure was no option this time. All right, Gu Zhu agreed. He looked grave and solemn now. This time, their opponent was a shrine. Since it's that way, let's separate now. Tian Ruojian, Lin Feng and I, we're going to the godly grave, said Ao Songhai. They all departed hastily. The godly grave was one of the 7 famous forbidden territories. However, the godly grave was the most visited forbidden territory. It was said that that place was truly the grave of a god. It was in the imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds, and apparently similar to the pit of hell. The entrance to the godly grave was in Blood Great Imperial City, situated in a blood-red demon ocean. The city was chaotic, but it was the only entrance. Lin Feng and the others arrived in the sky above the blood-red demon ocean. The water surged and seemed to roar with anger as they struck the shore. Lin Feng and the others shivered. There were all sorts of places in the imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds. Where did this blood ocean come from? According to legends, it was made of the blood of billions of powerful cultivators. But most people didn't believe in that story. Most people believed in another story, that it was the condensed blood of some spiritual beings. Why is there lightning? Asked Lin Feng. There was blood-red lightning flashing in the vault of heaven. It made the blood roar even more fiercely. It was a terrifying place. I don't know. It's a strange world. There are many mysteries, murmured Tian Ruojian. No matter how strong people were, there were always things they didn't know. Or maybe the strongest cultivators in the world were omniscient. We're here, said Ao Songhai. He gazed into the distance. Above the blood ocean was a vast and boundless city. It looked spectacular. Blood Great Imperial City. I hope we'll find Xiongyu, and the fire shrine will release my son, thought Lin Feng. His eyes glittered as the 3 of them moved forwards. Chapter 2372. Dragon Clan's King Clan Lin Feng and the others swiftly drew closer to Blood Great Imperial City. From time to time, the 3 of them saw some strong cultivators come out of that blood-red city. Their chi was terrifying, but saints were discreet. Blood Great Imperial City is a chaotic city. People who come here usually want to go to the godly grave, which means they are extremely strong. There are traces of ancient saints everywhere in this city. There are saints' traces almost everywhere in the world, but especially in places like this, because people who go to forbidden territories are mostly saints, said Ao Songhai. Extremely strong cultivators of the supreme animal world regularly come here to go to the godly grave. Are there spiritual beings in the godly grave? Asked Lin Feng. He was curious. Ao Songhai was a prince of the dragon clan. He knew many things most people didn't. I went inside the godly grave a few thousand years ago. You will see some godly figures. However, I'm not sure about real spiritual beings. Ao Songhai smiled. Lin Feng's eyes lit up. Godly figures? He would see some godly figures. The forbidden territories are extremely dangerous. That's why they're called forbidden territories. The death rates inside are extremely high. You've already been inside, how dangerous was it? The godly grave is different from other forbidden territories. It is the most visited forbidden territory. It is similar to the supreme ancient pit of hell. Most people who go to the supreme ancient pit of hell don't come out alive. They either die or turn into Demon King's puppets. Ganji's time is very mysterious. It's misty, strange, and spiritual. The biggest danger in there comes from the other cultivators who go inside. They are terrifyingly strong. In the godly grave, there are God's traces and many battlefields. They try to pull you in. But there are also opportunities in there. Last time I went there, I wasn't lucky, and I nearly died. Ao Songhai related calmly. Lin Feng could imagine. Ao Songhai was extremely strong, and yet had nearly died in there. So great emperors can't go in, right? Asked Lin Feng. Ao Songhai smiled. Not necessarily. I've heard about a weak fellow who found some god's historical remains. 100 years later, he came out and had become terrifyingly strong. Such things happen? Lin Feng was startled, but he laughed and shook his head. Nothing was impossible in the world. If there were really spiritual beings' historical remains, it could change some people's destinies. Alright, let's go in. I hope we'll find Xiongyu in time, said Ao Songhai neutrally. He continued moving. They entered Blood Great Imperial City and made their way through the city. The blood qi there was extremely thick and rich. From time to time, some people looked at them, but they could see that it was better not to offend such people, so nobody dared. As expected, it's a chaotic city, thought Lin Feng glancing around. People were fighting everywhere. He was speechless. Many people were there just to steal from other people. Of course, only strength matters in Blood Great Imperial City, replied someone. Then, some people appeared in front of Lin Feng. The leader of the group was extremely strong. Surprisingly, he was a saint. His eyes were filled with blood lights. He stared at Lin Feng and his allies. Not bad. You've returned to your true selves. You have already transcended worldliness and attained holiness. Good, we actually needed some people to go to the godly grave. Come with us. Kidnappers? Lin Feng was astonished. Those people weren't stealing treasures, they kidnapped people? Which group are you from? Are you even qualified to talk to us that way? Asked Ao Songhai. Oh, use people, trust me, the blood-based alliance is really strong, replied that person. Ao Songhai's eyes glittered. Oh, you? I see. He surprisingly came here to become a king and built the blood-based alliance. Alright, we'll come with you. OU is an extraordinarily famous high-level saint. He disappeared 1,000 years ago. People in the outside world don't know much about him. I never thought he'd form a group in Blood Great Imperial City. It's probably because he wants to solve the mysteries of the godly grave. He wants to become stronger and eventually break through. Tian Ruojian told Lin Feng. Lin Feng was surprised again. OU was another monstrously strong cultivator. The leader of the group was startled that Lin Feng and the others talked about OU in such a flattering way. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, we won't disappoint you." They moved off. Lin Feng and the others followed. After a short time, they arrived in front of a blood-red palace. It was gigantic, with a flight of stairs with 99 steps in front of them. There were 2 lofty blood dragons there, looking powerful and mighty. "We're here. Come." The group of people landed on the ground. They turned around and said to Lin Feng and the others, "Let's go. Come on." However, they found out that Lin Feng and the 2 others didn't move. They just stood there calmly. "Have OU come out?" said Ao Songhai indifferently. The leader frowned and said, "Your Excellency, it's the blood-based alliance here. You didn't come because you wanted to, right? You came for another reason." "You're right," said Tian Ruojian indifferently. He was completely composed. The saint suddenly released his chi. Who are you? Asked the saint. He realized that these people were different. Have him come out and you'll know. Ao Songhai laughed. The saint frowned and said coldly, We'll first see how strong you are then. He rose up into the air. Blood-red clouds appeared in the sky and thundered loudly. They turned into a blood-red spear. I'll give it a try, said Lin Feng indifferently. Then he jumped forwards and disappeared. Then, he reappeared in front of his enemy. He was extremely fast. Die! Shouted that guy explosively. The blood-red spear streaked across the sky towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng stretched out his hands, and terrifying hand imprints grabbed the spear. The saint's face paled. Lin Feng was the youngest of these three people, looked totally unflustered. But he was already dangerous. So the two others were probably even more terrifying. You can't compete with us. Have you come out? Said Lin Feng dismissively. The other's face stiffened. He looked at Lin Feng's hands imprints holding the blood spear speechlessly. He released more chi which filled the air. A few saints appeared. Lin Feng was surprised. The blood-based alliance wasn't a clan. It was an alliance. And impressively they could compete with a clan. Who wants to see me? Demanded someone at that moment. The voice came from the vault of heaven. Lin Feng and the others raised their heads and saw a figure appear above them. You're Ou? Asked Ao Songhai, standing there with his hands clasped behind his back. Who are you? Asked Ou. When he saw Ao Songhai's clothes and helmet he frowned. He had never seen those clothes, but they looked like the clothes the members of the Dragon Clan wore. It doesn't matter. I need you to do something, said Ao Songhai calmly. The reason why he had decided to come was to ask the Blood-Based Alliance for help finding Xiongnu. It would be much easier that way. How audacious, said Ou coldly. He released a terrifying king chi. Moons appeared in the sky and shone down on Ao Songhai. Insolent, said Ao Songhai looking at the moons. He flew up and roared out, striking a moon with his hands, his dragon chants spreading out. There was a thunderous boom as the moon exploded. Dragon Clan? Ou frowned and said coldly, You're from the King Clan of the Dragon Clan? Ao Songhai grunted coldly in response. Golden dragons appeared all with 5 claws. They started ripping apart all the moons, which exploded one after another. Ou pulled a long face. As expected, King Clan from the Dragon Clan, golden dragons with 5 claws. His attacks were extremely powerful. Chapter 2373, Celestial Assassins Alliance. Which prince are you? Asked Ou after he saw his moons get destroyed, staring at Ao Songhai. Let's finish the battle and we'll talk, said Ao Songhai coldly. He continued rising up in the air. Even though he wasn't as fast as a great oriental greenfinch rock, the 5-clawed golden dragon were also extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, his hand appeared in front of Ou. Dragons were experts in terms of strength, especially 5-clawed golden dragons from the King Clan of the Dragon Clan. That attack seemed like it could destroy the earth and sky. The atmosphere distorted around it. Ou's figure exploded. However, Ao Songhai's expression didn't change. He saw a moon appear, and then Ou appeared inside. A moment before it was only a shadow. Moon shadow. Ao Songhai was impressed. Moons reappeared shining brightly. Ao Songhai smiled coldly. He opened his mouth and roared. His dragons roared furiously, and made the earth and sky tremble. Go, said Tian Ruojian taking Lin Feng backwards. A 5-clawed golden dragon appeared behind Ao Songhai. At the same time in the sky, more 5-clawed golden dragons appeared and roared out. They tore apart all the moons on their path. He was forcing Ou to show himself. Die! Ou borrowed the strength of the sky to release more moons. The sky cracked. Lin Feng was amazed as he watched the fight. It felt like the sky was about to collapse. Ao Songhai shouted furiously. He rose up and raised his fist. Time seemed to stop. The moonlights and the fist collided. The lights were scattered explosively. However, blood appeared on Ao Songhai's fist. The moon attacks were powerful. Where are you going? Said Ao Songhai, rising higher up in the air. He raised his fist again. The space was trembling. Lin Feng was shaking too. This fight was just astonishing. Ou's figure appeared. He coughed up blood, his face pale. However, he still looked at Ao Songhai coldly. I'm the fourth prince of the dragon clan, Ao Songhai. No need to fight against me. I can easily destroy the blood-based alliance. Also Tian Ruojian is behind me. You've probably heard of him, said Ao Songhai. Oyu was astonished. The fourth prince of the dragon clan and Kasayapa's disciple, Tian Ruojian. What do you want? Oyu asked Ao Songhai. Let's go in to talk, said Ao Songhai. He walked forwards. Tian Ruojian and Lin Feng followed him and entered the blood-based alliance as if they owned it. In the main hall, Ao Songhai sat down on the leader's throne and said to Oyu, Have you heard of Cheong Yu? No, said Oyu, shaking his head. Ao Songhai was not surprised. He's a very core disciple of the Fire Shrine. He's discreet. If you don't know about him, you can use your network to learn about him. He's here with some other strong cultivators of the Fire Shrine, so it shouldn't be difficult to learn about him. Just try and find members of the Fire Shrine. It should be easy. Even though the members of the Fire Shrine were discreet, they didn't hide either, as it wasn't necessary. If someone wanted to find them, it would not be difficult. All right, and then you'll leave? Oyu asked Ao Songhai. He looked angry. Even though he wasn't as strong as Ao Songhai, he was a saint too, and he didn't want to be submissive in front of other people. Just do what I told you. Don't worry. We're not interested in the blood-based alliance. All right, wait for my message, said Oyu. He turned around and left Ao Songhai, Tian Ruojian, and Lin Feng alone in the main hall. If Cheong Yu is in the city, Oyu will definitely find him. If there are extremely strong cultivators with Cheong Yu, then things will be troublesome, said Ao Songhai. After all, he couldn't get involved. He was a member of the Dragon Clan. The cultivators with Cheong Yu were probably extremely strong. It would definitely be very difficult for Lin Feng and Tian Ruojian to capture Cheong Yu. All we can do is wait, murmured Lin Feng. The blood-based alliance didn't disappoint them. 2 days later, Oyu found them. So any news? Asked Ao Songhai to Oyu. Yes, you're looking for Cheong Yu, a low-level saint, right? Indeed, where is he? Smiled Ao Songhai. Cheong Yu was probably still in Blood Great Imperial City. Why are you looking for him? Asked Oyu. It's none of your business, replied Ao Songhai. I just want to warn you, if you want to cause trouble or even kill him, you have to know that Cheong Yu and a group of people from the Fire Shrine are in the Celestial Assassins Alliance right now. You must have heard of the Celestial Assassins Alliance. Even if the members of the Fire Shrine and Cheong Yu were alone, you wouldn't be able to harm them. Celestial Assassins Alliance. Ao Songhai was displeased. Then he looked at Lin Feng and said, The Celestial Assassins Alliance is an influential group which has existed for a very long time in Blood Great Imperial City. They're quite strong, in the top 3 groups of the city. The group was formed after people from many places who wanted to go to the godly grave gathered. When Lin Feng heard that, he frowned. Celestial Assassins Alliance? Cheong Yu was in the Celestial Assassins Alliance? And he was with terrifying cultivators? So, I have to go to the Celestial Assassins Alliance, thought Lin Feng. Jitian was in the Fire Shrine, even though some people were trying to solve the situation there. Getting Jitian back from Tianyin City was impossible. Lin Feng had only 2 solutions, capturing Cheong Yu or handing himself over. He couldn't go to the Celestial Assassins Alliance as Lin Feng, but he could use another identity. I have my own world, I can easily imprison Cheong Yu. The difficult part is to kidnap him and then escape safely, thought Lin Feng. Then, he looked at Ao Songhai and Tian Ruojian. Masters, I intend to change my identity and go to the Celestial Assassins Alliance to see whether I can kidnap Cheong Yu or not. It's too dangerous and difficult. And Cheong Yu's fighting abilities are terrifying. You can't do it alone, replied Ao Songhai telepathically. Lin Feng was brave, but it was a big risk. Indeed. You can't take that risk, said Tian Ruojian. Oyu guessed that these 3 people were talking telepathically, so he just stood there calmly. Lin Feng looked at Ao Songhai and Tian Ruojian. He said telepathically, I have to try. There is no other option. Ao Songhai and Tian Ruojian glanced at one another. Since you want to do that, we won't stop you. I'll stay in the Blood-based Alliance. If you need anything or if they kidnap you, Get in touch with me and I will do my best to save you, said Ao Songhai. But you must be extremely careful. No matter what, they must not learn who you are. I'll be outside of the Celestial Assassins Alliance waiting for you, said Tian Ruojian. They both accepted Lin Feng's decision. Even though it was very dangerous, they also thought that it was what any strong cultivator would have done. All right, good, said Lin Feng. He looked at OU and said, please give me a map of the Blood Great Imperial City and the Celestial Assassins Alliance. All right, OU nodded. He transmitted maps to Lin Feng using his godly awareness. Thank you, said Lin Feng, standing up. Tian Ruojian followed him, and they left the main hall. Ao Songhai stayed there and said to OU, I want to stay here for a few days. I hope you don't mind. Lin Feng and Tian Ruojian separated on the way. Lin Feng changed his face. He still looked young but sick. His face was very pale. His hair was hanging to one side like horsehair. He arrived outside of the Celestial Assassins Alliance quickly. The Celestial Assassins Alliance was one of the most powerful groups of the city. Their buildings were much more spectacular than the Blood-Base Alliance's buildings. A gigantic horizontal structure appeared in Lin Feng's field of vision. Behind Lin Feng was a gate on which was written Celestial Assassins Alliance. Lin Feng had already crossed the main gate of the Celestial Assassins Alliance. What do you want here? Asked one of the guards coldly. They were all cultivators of the Di-Chi layer. Lin Feng released absolutely no Qi, and it was impossible to know what his cultivation level was. I want to join the Celestial Assassins Alliance, said Lin Feng. If you can cross the 9 Celestial Assassins gates, you'll be able to join the Celestial Assassins Alliance, said his questioner. Lin Feng glanced at him and walked forwards. A powerful Qi surrounded him. However, Lin Feng waved his hands, and those people ended up in an illusion. They were all astonished to suddenly find there was nothing around them. What a powerful illusion. He just waved his hands to create such a terrifying illusion, said one of them, pulling a long face. By the time the illusion disappeared, they turned around and Lin Feng had already crossed 5 Celestial Assassins gates. Chapter 2374. Closely following the guards of the different gates grew more powerful. However, Lin Feng easily crossed 6 gates. When he arrived at the 7th one, the guards were already half-saints. The guards were 2 old men, their eyes bloodshot. They glanced at Lin Feng coldly. They flew up and waved their hands. Instantly, terrifying blood-red hands shot towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng's eyes became 2 black holes. He looked terrifying. Come in, said Lin Feng. Suddenly, the 2 guards couldn't see anything anymore. But darkness filled with death strength surrounded them. What a powerful attack. The 2 old men pulled long faces. This challenger's illusions were extremely powerful. They attacked the illusion together, and it exploded. But when they came back to their senses, they realized that Lin Feng had already crossed the 8th gate. How strong! The 2 old men looked at Lin Feng and took a deep breath. Another strong cultivator is going to join the alliance. I hope they'll be lucky in the godly grave this time. I hope they'll find some historical remains, said the other one. Lin Feng was already fighting against the guard of the 9th gate. There was only one, but he was extremely strong. He was also a half-saint, but his fighting abilities were impressive. His attacks were incredible. However, it wasn't enough to deal with Lin Feng, and he quickly lost. Lin Feng could easily pass that challenge as well. Not bad. Another saint is joining our organization. What's your name? Asked the guard, smiling at Lin Feng. Mu Feng, said Lin Feng. Brother Mu Feng, you're very strong. You probably want to go to the godly grave as well. That's why you came to the Celestial Assassins Alliance, right? Asked the guard with a smile. The Celestial Assassins Alliance existed because of the godly grave. Indeed. How many strong cultivators are there this time? Asked Lin Feng. The godly grave is like the other forbidden territories. It's easy to go in, but it's difficult to come back out alive. Therefore, it's better to be prepared. This time, the Celestial Assassins Alliance has started preparing an impressive army. You won't be disappointed. The Celestial Assassins Alliance prepared great materials and has gathered some great cultivators. Can you recommend me? Asked Lin Feng. No rush. We'll get you a place to rest first. Then, I'll recommend you and you'll get to know them, said the man. His figure flickered and Lin Feng followed him. He showed Lin Feng to a place where he could rest, and told Lin Feng some more details, then left. Lin Feng sat down cross-legged in a courtyard. He released threads of godly awareness, which flew up and turned into a vast network, and Lin Feng could see almost everything in the Celestial Assassins Alliance. Many people raised their heads and smiled coldly. Observing a whole town with one's godly awareness wasn't polite. In the Celestial Assassins Alliance, many threads of godly awareness also flew up and looked back at Lin Feng. But Lin Feng didn't mind. Very quickly he noticed a courtyard. There was a group of people there seated cross-legged calmly. Their chi was terrifying. They were wearing fire robes. They were probably members of the fire shrine. Who dares act so audaciously? Whispered someone raising their head. Piss off, said someone coldly. That terrifying voice shook everybody in the city. Lin Feng opened his eyes and recalled his godly awareness. His eyes were sharp. Those people were definitely members of the fire shrine. So Qiongyu had to be in the group. Lin Feng had noticed a young man in the group, looking quite composed. He might be Qiongyu. Where the members of the fire shrine were staying, someone asked, "Who was that?" "I don't know. A sick-looking young man. His cultivation is mysterious. I've never seen him. He must have just joined the Celestial Assassins Alliance," replied someone. "That guy is audacious, daring to look at people with his godly awareness." Some people also laughed. They didn't mind. Lin Feng didn't move. Even if Qiongyu was there, he was surrounded by terrifyingly strong cultivators. It was impossible to capture him here. He had to wait for an opportunity. During the following days, Lin Feng inspected the city with his godly awareness every day as if he were sun-gazing. Some people were annoyed, but didn't say anything because he didn't go and inspect secret areas. And he didn't disturb people who were meditating either. Some people were annoyed, however. Why did he do that? Was he practicing cultivation? Time passed slowly. In Tianyin City, the atmosphere was lively too. Many strong cultivators were there, including strong cultivators from the Fortune Shrine and the World Clan. Of course, Lin Feng's clone was there too. Two of Lin Feng's clones were constantly in the Fortune Shrine. One of them stayed in the Fortune Shrine and did the things he did all the time. Read books, spend time with Mengqing, practice cultivation. But now that Zhetian had been captured by the Fire Shrine, how could Mengqing be happy? She was extremely worried every day. Lin Feng's clone had gone to Tianyin City. As long as he didn't use his full strength, nobody would notice it was just a clone. There was action on all sides. In a palace of Tianyin City, the diviner and Lin Feng were together. The diviner asked, "How are things there?" "I'm still in the Celestial Assassins Alliance. The date of the journey to the godly grave hasn't been planned yet." "All right. Wait for me, I'll be there soon. If they want to go to the godly grave, find a way to prevent them from going," said the diviner. Lin Feng nodded. Lin Feng knew that the diviner who was with him was actually a clone too. Lin Feng's real body was in the Celestial Assassins Alliance, and his clone was in Tianyin City. The diviner's clone was in Tianyin City too, and he was going to the Celestial Assassins Alliance with his real body. Lin Feng didn't know what the diviner was doing the whole time with his real body, but now he was going to see Maradeva's real body. "What do we do here?" asked Lin Feng. He had inspected the Celestial Assassins Alliance with his godly awareness. He was worried that Qiongyu would go to the godly grave, and he would have no opportunity to catch him. Now that the diviner was going to help him there, it was much better that way. I informed the Fire Shrine. They agreed to meet tomorrow. At that moment, "I'll be in Blood Great Imperial City already," said the diviner indifferently. Lin Feng's eyes twinkled. One more day. The very next day, early in the morning, Lin Feng was awake as someone called him. "Brother Mu Feng, come out." When Lin Feng heard that, he went out. It was the guard of the 9th gate. He smiled. "Brother Mu Feng, let's go. We have a meeting. We'll get to know each other, and then we'll go to the godly grave." Today, Lin Feng was stupefied. How tense. The diviner needed half a day more to arrive. He was rushing over to Blood Great Imperial City. "Indeed. Let's go," that person smiled. He led the way as Lin Feng followed him. Even if he didn't want to go to the godly grave, he needed to prevent the others from going. After a short time, they arrived on a public field. There were dozens of people present. They were all extremely strong. When they saw Lin Feng, people were surprised. Someone laughed and said, "That's the guy who kept inspecting the city using his godly awareness. I wonder why he did that." "Sorry, I just joined the Celestial Assassins Alliance. I'm not familiar with the rules," said Lin Feng, smiling mirthlessly. He glanced at the crowd and saw the members of the fire shrine. In the middle of their group was a young man, probably Qiongyu. Lin Feng was now sure that it was him. Lin Feng didn't say anything, he just clenched his fists. Everybody was there, so he couldn't kidnap Qiongyu. He hoped the diviner would arrive quickly, then Tian Ruojian would be able to help them too. Chapter 2375. Arriving on time, the morning sun shone upon Tianyin City. It was very hot there. There was a gigantic palace, and in the sunlight it looked like it was on fire. It was the Fire Shrine's palace. Many people gathered on a public field. On one side, everybody was wearing a fire robe. They all had an extraordinary qi and were extremely strong. In the middle of them, there was one cultivator much weaker than everybody else. It was Zhetian. "Father!" shouted Zhetian when he saw Lin Feng. He didn't look good. He said to Lin Feng telepathically, "Father, I'm alright, don't worry about me. They're well prepared, you can't do anything." Lin Feng said nothing. He glanced at the members of the fire shrine, and finally looked at Qiong Lin. "You're a shrine and you stand at the very top of the continent of the 9 clouds. You dare take a young man as a hostage? How shameless." "No need to tell me that. I told you, we're not going to harm him. Come here and we'll release him," said Qiong Lin indifferently. He looked quite composed. "It's not the first time the Fire Shrine has done something like this. If you don't release him, the Fortune Shrine will lose patience," said the diviner plainly. "Lose patience? So what will you do then?" said Qiong Lin, smiling coldly. The diviner closed his eyes and didn't say anything. The atmosphere became eerily silent. Nobody said anything, both sides waited. In the Celestial Assassins Alliance, everybody was getting familiar with each other. When the Fire Shrine's members introduced themselves, the crowd paid more attention. "This time, some members of the Fire Shrine are with us. Therefore we'll choose the fire entry. We'll see if we're lucky and bump into some spiritual beings," said someone at that moment sternly. "The 9 spiritual beings' graves are real battlefields. We have to help each other inside, and we should separate." "All right," the crowd nodded. "Everybody understands, good, let's go," said the cultivator of the Celestial Assassins Alliance. They were ready to go to the godly grave. "Wait," said Lin Feng suddenly. Everybody looked at him. "Yes, what?" asked the cultivator. "I have a friend who wants to come. He's extremely strong." "We should wait," said Lin Feng. The strong cultivator's eyes twinkled. "How strong?" "A high-level saint, he's at the very top of that level. His fighting abilities are incredible. He's not really a friend. He's more like an elder I have affection for, a mentor. He had to do something on his way, so he's a bit late," said Lin Feng. The leader was astonished. A high-level saint who had terrifying fighting abilities? That person was definitely worth waiting for. "Since it's that way, let's wait for him," said the cultivator. Everybody agreed readily. Lin Feng was a bit relieved. However, 1 hour later many people frowned. "He's not here yet?" "Just wait, he'll be here soon," replied Lin Feng. "You have no notion of time. Let's forget it, let's go," said that person. "Right, one more isn't necessary. We don't even know if he told the truth. Let's go to the godly grave. If he can catch up, then we'll see," said someone. "Let's go," said the members of the Fire Shrine. They didn't feel like waiting around either. Lin Feng watched the crowd leave, unable to keep them waiting longer. He followed the crowd and at the same time, his clone told the diviner the way and hoped he'd manage to catch up. There were 9 entrances to the godly grave in the city. Back in the ancient times, there were only 9 shrines, and 9 spiritual beings controlled the continent. Time had passed, some shrines had disappeared, some had risen, but there were still only 9 entrances. Each entrance led to a spiritual being. The crowd was at the fire entrance. In front of them was an ocean of blood, and above that ocean, there was a gigantic fire. That was the fire grave, and according to legends, there were the historical remains of a fire spiritual being there. Lin Feng had read as many books as possible in the Fortune Shrine, and he had read a lot about the Forbidden Territories. He knew the basics about them, but at that moment, he didn't really care about the Forbidden Territories. The diviner was almost there, but one more step, and they'd be in the godly grave though. These days, Xiongyu had spent all his time with the strong cultivators of the fire shrine. Lin Feng hadn't had any opportunity to catch him. In the godly grave, it'd be even more dangerous. "Let's go," said someone. "Wait," said Lin Feng suddenly. His figure flickered, and he landed in front the entrance. He had his back turned to the entrance. He said to the crowd, "Everybody please wait. He'll be here soon." Many people frowned and lost patience. "We've already waited for a long time, but he has not come. We can't waste time because of one person." "Move," said someone indifferently. "Mu Feng, don't be annoying," said the cultivator of the Celestial Assassins Alliance. "The time needed to burn a joss stick will be enough," said Lin Feng to the crowd. "Move," shouted someone explosively. "If he comes and we're inside, you can tell him where we are." "Insolent," said someone releasing energy which oppressed Lin Feng. Lin Feng said, "Everybody, this is serious. I must prevent you from going in, otherwise the consequences will be dramatic." The crowd looked furious. Some people made steps forwards and someone said coldly, "You're trying to scare us? What is serious? What consequences?" "Please stop, everybody," said someone at that moment. A figure appeared in the sky, his voice reverberating. The crowd frowned as the man's voice resonated in their souls. "Who are you, Your Excellency?" asked someone. "It's about the shrines." "Everybody stop moving," said the voice. The crowd was startled. "The shrines? About the shrines?" The members of the fire shrine looked angry. They stepped forwards and said, "Ignore him, everybody. I'd be curious to see which shrine he's from anyway." "Insolent. Are all the members of the fire shrine that arrogant?" asked the voice aggressively. The members of the fire shrine gazed into the distance and said coldly, "You're insolent. If you dare stay, you'll see who's insolent," said the voice. The members of the fire shrine pulled a long face. "That person dared threaten them? I'd like to see who dares act that insolently as well," said some people. They had decided to wait. At that moment, someone appeared in the distance. He looked at the crowd and said, "It's not me. I'm just someone who wants to go to the godly grave." It was Tian Ruojian. Many people knew his name, but not what he looked like. The continent of the 9 clouds was too big. The crowd didn't enter the godly grave. They wanted to see the person who dared threaten the fire shrine. In the distance, clouds appeared and a strong wind started blowing. A terrifying aura filled the air. Very quickly, the crowd saw a figure, their robe fluttering in the wind. He looked furious. "He's here." Lin Feng frowned. "That was Maradeva." The crowd frowned. That person looked familiar, but they didn't know where they had seen him. "It's Maradeva," said someone suddenly. The members of the fire shrine frowned when they saw it was Maradeva. He hadn't appeared for a very long time. He always appeared as the diviner. Most people had forgotten about Maradeva. "Xiongyu, go to the godly grave first," said the members of the fire shrine to Xiongyu and the others. They understood something unusual was going on. What did Maradeva want to do? At that moment, a terrifying sword strength arose with a hum. The crowd shook and looked at Tian Ruojian. They hadn't thought this guy was so strong. And they were together. "Bastard!" shouted Maradeva explosively. The atmosphere became illusionary. "Maradeva, what is this supposed to mean?" swore a strong cultivator of the fire shrine. "I've told you, the fortune shrine has lost patience," said Maradeva coldly. A gigantic hand descended from the sky. At the same time, Tian Ruojian released terrifying sword energies. Lin Feng took out a dazzling sword. It was time to capture Xiongyu finally. Chapter 2376. Chasing Maradeva, formerly the Fiend, now Fortune Shrine's diviner, is here, blurted out the crowd when they saw this. The Fortune Shrine and the Fire Shrine were directly confronting one another. Mu Feng had been wasting time for Maradeva to arrive. "You dare act that arrogantly here?" shouted someone loudly. Maradeva and the strong cultivators of the Fire Shrine collided. Explosions rent in the air. A strong cultivator of the Fire Shrine groaned and released even more energies. His eyes filled with killer intent. No wonder Maradeva wasn't worried about infuriating the Fire Shrine. The Fortune and the Fire Shrines were not friendly at all. "I've told you, the Fortune Shrine has lost patience," said Maradeva coldly. He was staring at Qiongyu. Qionyu's face stiffened. "Qiongyu, go into the godly grave. You're their target," said a strong cultivator. Qiongyu and two others nodded and flew towards the fire entrance. A peerless sword energy surrounded Qiongyu and constricted him. It felt like that sword was coming from heaven. Qiongyu had the impression he was hallucinating. No matter what, he couldn't escape its killing power. He wanted to move away, but he realized he was extremely slow. Kasayapa sword technique. He's Tianrua Jian. Qiongyu and the two other people's faces changed drastically. They had never seen Tianrua Jian, but they could guess who he was considering his attack. Many people from the shrines had had the opportunity to sense Kasayapa's sword intent. It was impossible to forget. "Explode!" shouted one of them loudly. The atmosphere turned into a fireball. The deceleration energy broke apart. Another man flashed forwards, lights emerging from his fingers and moving towards Tianrua Jian. "Go!" shouted the two cultivators in front of Qiongyu. The other strong cultivators confronted Maradeva. Since Maradeva's target was Qiongyu, they had to go into the godly grave. Inside were other strong cultivators from the Fire Shrine. Qiongyu felt relaxed with the help of those two. He flashed towards the fire entrance, but found Lin Feng standing there. His sword emitted whistling sounds. A terrifying energy filled the air. He didn't move, but the atmosphere around him stiffened. That sword attack was dangerous. Qiongyu stopped and released an explosive fire. He shouted furiously, "Die!" A fire spear appeared in Qionyu's hand. It rotated rapidly, releasing a black fire which formed a vortex. Lin Feng was still standing there, as if the outside world had nothing to do with him. He released God's strength and condensed it into his sword. A wave of heat rolled towards Lin Feng. His skin suddenly felt extremely sore, as if he were being roasted. He waved his hands and finally moved invisibly fast. However, he still didn't move his sword. He flew towards the spear. Finally, Lin Feng's sword moved. It was extremely fast as light. Qiongyu couldn't even see it clearly. How fast? He couldn't believe it. "Piss off," he shouted. His spear continued moving forwards, a fire trail appearing behind it, and flames howled around it. But the sword was already in front of him. He moved back quickly and terrifying lights emerged from his third eye. Lin Feng's sword cut through the lights, and the sword intent disappeared. He was surprised. Qiongyu was already far away. Qiongyu released more light beams, but then he realized they were shattering. "They're broken." What a terrifying attack. Qionyu's face stiffened. He noticed that Lin Feng was also surprised. He had been too careless a moment before, deciding to throw himself at Lin Feng just now. He hadn't thought Lin Feng's speed was so terrifying. "Qiongyu, go into the godly grave," shouted someone, landing in front of Qiongyu. They had to get Qiongyu into the godly grave to protect him. "All right, get ready to disperse," said Qiongyu. However, Lin Feng looked at him coldly. Lights twinkled under his feet as he cast a deployment spell. "Go!" shouted the fire saint. He struck the ground with his fingers, and it shook violently. A terrifying fire struck the deployment marks, the ground shattered. Qiongyu moved towards the fire entrance as fast as possible. Maradeva and Tianrua Jian were terrifyingly strong, very dangerous. And if they had the opportunity, they'd be able to capture Qiongyu easily. Even if Qiongyu was strong, he couldn't compete with them. Lin Feng was grim. The enemy had managed to stop his deployment spell. He turned around and looked after Qiongyu. However, a fire saint threw himself at him, a scorching hot energy penetrating into his body. As he ran towards Lin Feng, his fire was becoming more and more powerful. Lin Feng's body stiffened. An oppressive black fire surrounded him. The attack was really strong. "No!" Lin Feng looked at Qiongyu, who was getting closer and closer to the entrance. He was about to succeed. Die! Shouted Lin Feng furiously. A death cage appeared, and his sword moved towards the man quickly. This time, he didn't use the fast strength, he used the heavy strength. Even though the opponent was in his illusion, his attacks were terrifying and made Lin Feng tremble. What a powerful attack! Lin Feng grit his teeth. His god strength surged out, and his sword penetrated into the cage of darkness. It was a terrifying and aggressive attack, a heavy blow. Die! Shouted Lin Feng. That attack destroyed his opponent's saint's weapon, and crashed onto his body, and blew him apart. However, Lin Feng didn't look happy. He turned around again, and saw that Qiongyu was already in the godly grave. Lin Feng pulled a long face. He glanced at Maradeva and Tianrua Jian and said, "I'm going in. It's too dangerous inside," shouted Maradeva. As Lin Feng chased after Qiongyu, it was extremely dangerous, but Lin Feng didn't care. Maradeva and Tianrua Jian could deal with the members of the fire shrine, who were still outside. That way, Lin Feng would be able to deal with Qiongyu without them. It was good enough. Lin Feng jumped into the entrance to the godly grave. He still had some flames on his body. There were some blisters which burst and bled. His previous opponent had been extremely strong. I'll definitely catch Qiongyu, thought Lin Feng. His eyes gleamed. He had to capture Qiongyu to get Jitian back. This was an opportunity, and there weren't other people from shrines present for once. Lin Feng jumped into the godly grave. The crowd around was astonished. How insane! He was chasing Qiongyu into the godly grave. Chapter 2377. Tear into each other. When the crowd saw Lin Feng jump into the godly grave, they also got ready to go enter. But someone shouted coldly, "Stop!" Maradeva jumped and landed in front of the godly grave. He glanced at the crowd and said, "Everybody, before the issue is solved, stay here. If you disobey and try to enter the godly grave, don't blame me." When the crowd heard him, they frowned. How arrogant! However, what could they do? He was famous and extremely strong. All they could do was shut up. Going to the godly grave wasn't exactly urgent. The strong cultivators of the fire shrine looked at Maradeva and said coldly, "You can't stop us with just your arrogance, Maradeva." "Never mind. At the very least, none of you will enter the godly grave," said Maradeva mercilessly. Tianrua Jian landed next to him, and they blocked the entrance. "You think too highly of yourself," said a low-level saint to Maradeva coldly. Maradeva glanced at him coldly. He stretched out his hand. A light beam emerged and surrounded that man. The lights constricted his soul. He could die anytime. "He's aiming at you. Escape!" shouted someone furiously next to him. That person's face stiffened, and he retreated. "It's too late for him to escape," said Maradeva coldly. He closed his eyes. Looking solemn and aloof, he said coldly, "Great destiny technique, heavenly laceration die." Celestial Tao condensed into the light beam. That cultivator's face paled. His soul started shaking violently as a light beam descended from the sky. The low-level saint from the fire shrine trembled. And then he closed his eyes and collapsed softly. He was dead. "You're lucky I want Qiongyu alive, otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to do anything," said Maradeva, reopening his eyes. He glanced at the strong cultivators of the fire shrine. They remained silent, and could only grimace. The Fortune Shrine had some terrifying Destiny Celestial Tao techniques. The heavenly laceration of the Great Destiny technique was nigh unstoppable. It was difficult to escape from the diviner. "You dare kill people from the fire shrine, Maradeva? You want to start a war between the shrines?" the high-level fire saint demanded of Maradeva. "We've been enduring your provocations for such a long time. Since you don't fear a war, why would the Fortune Shrine?" said Maradeva. A terrifying celestial Tao condensed in the sky and attacked another low-level saint. That person's face turned deathly pale. The Great Destiny technique's heavenly laceration was terrifying. The opponent had to have a powerful celestial Tao technique to resist it. "Maradeva, you bastard!" shouted a strong cultivator of the fire shrine. He then threw himself at Maradeva. Tianrua Jian jumped forwards, and a terrifying sword light beam appeared. Like time had stopped. The strong cultivator withdrew and condensed a black fire in his hand, throwing it at the sword. Die! Mahadev's eyes were filled with murder. He used his heavenly laceration again. The crowd was shaking. Another low-level saint died. Everybody remained quiet. Mahadev's strength was terrifying. Saints were dying. The strong cultivators of the fire shrine were furious. Mahadeva was killing low-level saints like insects. What would happen if he used it against high-level saints, though? Nobody knew because they hadn't sensed the real power of his heavenly laceration. Mahadeva wanted to slaughter them all. It meant that the fortune shrine couldn't stand them anymore. The fire shrine had been chasing their disciple for such a long time. The fortune shrine was furious. The fire shrine will not let the matter drop, said the high-level saint coldly. I don't intend to leave the matter at this either. Today, if we don't solve the issue in Tianyin City, the fortune shrine will start a war against the fire shrine. Are you ready for that? Said Mahadeva indifferently. The strong cultivator of the fire shrine was astonished. The issue in Tianyin City? They didn't know what was going on in Tianyin City, because they had left for the godly grave a while before. But apparently, the fire shrine had really offended the fortune shrine this time. Surprisingly, they were ready to start a war. When people heard about a war between the two shrines, they were stunned, and their hearts started pounding. If the fire shrine started a war against the fortune shrine, would they win? For both shrines, it would be a tragedy. Tianruojian, how did we offend you? And who was that young man a moment ago? Asked the strong cultivator of the fire shrine looking at Tianruojian. We can't stand you, said Tianruojian indifferently. He didn't say anything else. The strong cultivator of the fire shrine pulled a long face. On the other side, Lin Feng had entered the godly grave. A terrifying fire chi surrounded him. The fire grave was scorching hot there. However, Lin Feng wasn't interested in the place. He had just followed Qiongyu. He released his godly awareness and inspected the area. Very quickly, he sensed a powerful qi in the distance and flew in that direction. He was surrounded by empty space and wind strength to move faster. It was almost like he was teleporting himself. Qiongyu, fight, he shouted out. Qiongyu sensed that Lin Feng was chasing him, and that he was alone. Lin Feng's qi wasn't very powerful. He seemed weak. However, his saint's weapon was ancient and strange, terrifyingly powerful, and his strength was also strange. Qiongyu didn't stop, continuing to fly forwards. Even if he was going to fight against Lin Feng, he didn't want to fight next to the entrance. He wanted to get further in. Otherwise, if Mahadeva and Tianruojian entered, he'd be in danger. He couldn't compete with them. Besides, he didn't understand why Mahadeva and Tianruojian wanted to capture him. Fortune Shrine. Qiangyu's eyes twinkled. The qi in this place was terrifying and desolate. They both continued moving, Lin Feng slowly catching up. At that moment in Tianyin City, the members of the Fire Shrine and the Fortune Shrine were still silent. However, at that moment on the Fire Shrine's side, someone suddenly released an ice-cold qi. Suddenly, he looked at the diviner coldly. Mahadeva, you killed people from our shrine with your real body? Shouted that strong cultivator, breaking the silence. The crowd was stupefied, especially the members of the Fire Shrine. Mahadeva's real body? Some old people knew that Mahadeva had been practicing in seclusion with his real body. Was he out again? The diviner looked back at him calmly. You're chasing Qiongyu to kill him? That person's qi was becoming colder and colder. Back in the days, during the meeting of the continent of the 9 clouds, you attacked my disciple. After that, you continued chasing him. Do you think the Fortune Shrine would let you do that forever patiently? You're ridiculous, said the diviner indifferently. Release him now and we'll leave. And of course, we'll stop chasing Qiongyu. Release him? Make him come here, said that cultivator coldly. It seems that there's no space for negotiation, said the diviner indifferently. Everybody remained silent again. However, the members of the Fire Shrine felt pressured now. The Fortune Shrine was starting to kill their people. They were chasing Qiongyu, trying to threaten them by using Qiongyu as a hostage. The only thing they could do was wait and see if Qiongyu could escape. Mahadeva, if anything happens to Qiongyu, you'll pay the price for it, said the strong cultivator of the fire shrine coldly. The diviner looked back at him coldly and said, "You think we're desperate and taking huge risks? We've already started killing your people. If anything happens to Zhetian, the Fortune Shrine will start a real war against the Fire Shrine." When Maradeva said that, everybody remained silent. There were people from other shrines there, smiling coldly on the inside. If the Fire Shrine and the Fortune Shrine started a war, nobody would help them. The other shrines would be happy. The best thing would be if Lin Feng died too. Chapter 2378. Great Battle against Qiongyu. In the desolate, gloomy and scorching hot cave, the two figures kept flickering. After a very long time, Qiongyu decided that they were far enough from the entrance and stopped. He turned around and looked at Lin Feng coldly, as his fire spear appeared in his hand. Very quickly, Lin Feng landed in front of him, holding his god sword. "Before fighting, could you please tell me who you are?" Qiongyu asked. He didn't underestimate or despise Lin Feng. He had seen how terrifying his sword attacks were. Lin Feng didn't hide his real identity. It wasn't necessary anymore. The diviner had even started killing people from the Fire Shrine, and threatened to start a war. Either the Fortune Shrine, or the Fire Shrine would collapse. Lin Feng, who ranked first at the meeting of the Continent of the Nine Clouds. Qiongyu was surprised. He wasn't surprised to learn that the person in front of him was Lin Feng. He was surprised to see how strong he had become. Qiongyu didn't know much about Lin Feng. Not all the members of the shrines knew everything about Lin Feng. Qiongyu had only heard that amongst the top 10 cultivators of the meeting of the Continent of the Nine Clouds, one of them might have a forbidden body, and therefore the shrines wanted to kill him. However, Qiongyu didn't really believe in the legends related to the forbidden people. Could a forbidden person really trigger a shrine's dusk war? The shrines had already reached a certain level of strength. How come they hadn't managed to destroy someone who had a forbidden body? But now Qiongyu was facing Lin Feng, and felt some admiration for him. Not such a long time had passed since the meeting of the Continent of the Nine Clouds. Back then Lin Feng was only a cultivator of the top of the Huangqi layer. And now he had become a saint. How impressive! Qionyu's qi was becoming more and more intense. He said coldly, "The godly grave will become your grave. You should feel honored." A light beam emerged from Qionyu's hand. A drop of blood appeared, and turned into a dazzling fire armor, fusing with Qionyu's skin. Lin Feng was extremely strong, and Qiongyu preferred being cautious. Lin Feng had a terrifying saint's weapon, so with this armor, Qiongyu felt completely safe. "I see. You're really important in the Fire Shrine," said Lin Feng to Qiongyu. He wasn't surprised that Qiongyu had several saints' weapons. The fire spear was for attacks, and the armor was for defense, a complete set. Qiongyu moved towards Lin Feng. This time, he looked much more solemn and serious. Each time he took a step, celestial Tao flew up and he condensed it. He was going to use a saint's technique. Lin Feng looked unruffled. His robe was fluttering in the fiery wind. He didn't take Qiongyu into his own world immediately. Qiongyu couldn't escape anymore anyway, so why not have a real fight against him? Lin Feng wanted to try using his god's sword. Qiongyu lifted his spear, and condensed even more celestial Tao. Around him, several vortexes appeared and turned into spears. "Die!" shouted Qiongyu explosively. An endless number of black spears moved towards Lin Feng instantly, turning into fire tornadoes. Lin Feng took a step forwards and released God's strength. Lin Feng's sword thrust forwards and released absorbing strength, which turned into a vortex. It absorbed the spears one after another. Lin Feng's sword was like a black hole absorbing everything in its way. The sword had turned into a black hole which sucked in the spears. Lin Feng was trying out the absorbing strength of his sword. The spear Qiongyu was holding shook with his fury, and he shouted out. 3,000 spears appeared, and condensed into a single gigantic spear. It shot straight towards the black hole. Small fire dragons appeared and danced around the spear as they roared out. The black hole started trembling. Lin Feng took a few steps backwards as he cast a deployment spell. The atmosphere became golden. Empty space strength started intertwining. Lin Feng could cast deployment spells instantly with the power of his mind. He also condensed God's strength into his deployment spells. Humph. Xiongyu grunted coldly. He stabbed his spear into the ground, and the deployment spell on the ground started cracking. He didn't want to give Lin Feng time to cast a deployment spell. However, the deployment spell reappeared instantly. He wasn't as fast as Lin Feng. Lin Feng slowly walked forwards. An illusion appeared, and everything became dark around his opponent. However, in the darkness, there was a deadly sword shooting towards him. He started to get a bit worried. "Burn!" shouted Xiongyu. Flames of fury appeared in his eyes. Lin Feng's sword penetrated into the ocean of flames, piercing through and reappearing on the other side. Lin Feng frowned. It was as if his sword had pierced through nothing, through emptiness. It can't be. Suddenly he felt danger. He saw a pair of eyes filled with flames and closed his eyes. His eyes had just started burning painfully. Xiongyu also reappeared, lights dispersing around him. He was having a hard time too. His armor had shattered, forcing him to use an illusion to become immaterial, and his eyes to release fire to protect himself. "Destroy," said Xiongyu, pointing at Lin Feng. A terrifying saint's strength condensed and shot towards Lin Feng's third eye. Lin Feng countered with a terrifying death strength. They weren't that close to one another, but Lin Feng could sense how scary those energies were. At that moment, Lin Feng had the impression he could die instantly. However, he closed his eyes and remained completely calm. His sword was shooting forwards and he could not recall it, and he couldn't dodge either. He could only use one kind of strength to dodge. Great empty space technique. Lin Feng started entering an empty space. At the same time, he released qi towards Qiangyu's head. The invisible and intangible qi penetrated into Qiangyu's skull. At that moment, the only thing Qiangyu wanted to do was kill Lin Feng. "It's over," he said, pointing at Lin Feng. He charged forwards and smiled coldly, as if he had found something. He had to kill this guy. Qiangyu frowned. He realized there was something wrong. Sword intent. How is that possible? Qiangyu was astonished. Impossible. However, Qiangyu retreated as quickly as he could, but it was too late. Lin Feng's hand suddenly moved towards his head, and he had no time to stop him. No! The destructive hand was becoming bigger and bigger in his field of vision. It was impossible, but the hand still reached him. His soul shook violently, and his body went numb. A terrifying strength hit him with the force of a landslide and the power of a tidal wave. Happily, Lin Feng didn't want to kill him. He wanted to make him unable to fight. Qiangyu sensed his internal organs explode and coughed blood. Finally, he couldn't hold on anymore and collapsed. "Was it an illusion?" whispered Qiangyu, as if he had realized something. Lin Feng looked at Qiangyu. How dangerous. A moment before, he had created a dream using illusion strength, which corresponded to what Qiangyu wanted to see. However, Qiangyu wanted to kill him so badly, so it was difficult to resist. Lin Feng looked at his chest. There was blood, but it was worth it. Capturing Qiangyu was the most important thing in the world, for his son, Zhetian. But now, Lin Feng looked around and remembered that he was in the godly grave, one of the 7 forbidden territories. Chapter 2379. Forbidden Territory. Godly Grave in Tianyan City. When Lin Feng captured Qiangyu, his clone whispered to the diviner, "I have captured Qiangyu." "Good," said the diviner. He was happy. His real body was in blood, great imperial city slaughtering people. It was all worth it. He had helped Lin Feng seize an opportunity to capture Qiangyu. That way, the fire shrine wouldn't act so recklessly, and Zhetian would be safe. "I captured Qiangyu. Will you release him now?" asked the diviner to the members of the fire shrine. The members of the fire shrine were stunned. They took out jade talismans and called Qiangyu quickly. As expected, he wasn't reachable. Their expressions changed drastically. "Fortune Shrine, how sly. We're not as shameless as you, at least," the diviner replied pitilessly. "Well, you captured Qiangyu in the grave. How do we exchange people now?" "Release him for me for now," said Lin Feng indifferently. He walked forwards and said to the members of the fire shrine, "I captured Qiangyu. He's with my real body. You release Zhetian, I stay here. That way you can keep things under control." You? What if you give up your real body? Asked a strong cultivator of the fire shrine coldly, sounding skeptical. Lin Feng released chi into the air, and then raised his fist, punching out. He said, "My clones are extremely powerful too. You think I'd give up one of my powerful clones just to kill Qiongyu? I don't care about him at all." The members of the fire shrine frowned, trying to see if Lin Feng was telling the truth or not. Lin Feng said, "No need to think of a solution. If you act recklessly again, I won't trust you anymore. I'll give up my son and I'll kill Qiongyu." The members of the fire shrine looked pensive. Was giving up a clone worth saving Zhetian? "All right, let's do the exchange," said a saint of the fire shrine at that moment. Lin Feng looked at him and said, "All right, I'm coming, release Zhetian." Lin Feng's clone walked towards the saint of the fire shrine. As long as his clone was there, the fire shrine would wait, because his real body had Qiongyu. The fire shrine released Zhetian. Zhetian slowly walked forwards. When they passed next to each other, Zhetian said to Lin Feng telepathically, "Father, let's escape together." "We're in Tianyin City," replied Lin Feng. "Don't worry. It's only a clone. They won't do anything to me. You go back, go and see your mother." Zhetian's eyes were red, but he nodded and said, "Father, I will definitely become extremely strong." "Go," said Lin Feng calmly. He slapped Zhetian's shoulder. The fire shrine didn't do anything dodgy. When Zhetian went back, the diviner said, "We're off." Their figures flickered. The saints of the fire shrine glanced after them coldly. The diviner sensed a terrifying chi surrounding him. A few people appeared in front of him in the sky, staring at him coldly. Something appeared in the diviner's hand. Dazzling lights surrounded them, and the vault of heaven absorbed them. They turned into illusions and disappeared, leaving Tianyin City. They had gotten prepared. After the diviner and the others left, the cultivator of the fire shrine said, as expected, he prepared a teleportation scepter. "Get ready to fight. The fortune shrine doesn't fear a war. The fire shrine doesn't either," said an old man indifferently. Then they disappeared. That simple sentence could determine the fate of an entire generation. Lin Feng didn't control the situation. His strength was limited. There were many things he couldn't control. He knew that when he had entered the godly grave already, he didn't even know how to get out of the godly grave. Lin Feng's figure flickered. The landscapes were desolate, because everything was burning there. Anything that could survive, and there was a precious treasure. "There's someone." At that moment, Lin Feng saw a figure. The man was lying on the ground, injured. Lin Feng flashed forwards and landed next to the man. He was a saint emperor at the top of the Shengdi layer. In the outside world, apart from saints, such cultivators were already strong. Most of the time, only saints had the opportunity to meet other saints. Saints were too mysterious. A powerful life strength penetrated into the man's body, as Lin Feng helped him recover. The person said, "Thank you very much, master." "How long have you been in the godly grave?" asked Lin Feng. "How long?" That person looked confused. He was struggling to remember. "I forgot, hundreds of years, I guess," the man said sorrowfully. Back then, he was powerful and influential in the outside world. And now he had been stuck in there for hundreds of years. What had he gone through in there? "What is there in the godly grave?" asked Lin Feng. That person looked pensive. In the past, he used to think there were opportunities. He had thought he'd find historical remains. Then he had realized people were fighting everywhere inside. In the past he thought there weren't many saints. And only then he had realized he didn't know much about the world. He was at the top of the Shengdi layer, and kept being humiliated in there. He could do nothing but drift and live without purpose. Nobody respected him. He looked at Lin Feng. He looked desperate and replied, "Battles." "Battles?" asked Lin Feng, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I don't know either. People just wander around and fight. There are 9 exits. All of them correspond to 9 ancient spiritual beings. There are battlefields and historical remains. The godly grave is a place to fight. And regarding the historical remains, I've never found any. And I've never heard of any." He lowered his head and finished hoarsely, "I want to leave this evil place." "Why haven't I seen anyone?" asked Lin Feng. "And what is this? The word fire is written on your third eye." The word was written on the man's forehead, dimly discernible, and containing a particular chi. Continue straight ahead, there's a battlefield. You'll understand. The word fire is the spiritual being's signature. Anyone who goes there get his third eye signed. It proves you are one of the fire god's people, explained the man. Lin Feng frowned. Signature? And what did he mean with battlefields? What kind of place was the godly grave? Lin Feng had been to the supreme ancient pit of hell. It was an elaborate place with palaces, demon kings, demons, etc. Was the godly grave really only a grave for spiritual beings or gods? Lin Feng guessed that the forbidden territories all had mysteries. To the people who controlled those places, they probably weren't mysterious, however. Lin Feng understood that in this world, when reaching a certain level, there were no problems anymore. The forbidden territories weren't mysteries in the eyes of such people. Bring me there, said Lin Feng. The man shook his head quickly. Master, I don't want to go back there. I'll protect you, said Lin Feng. That cultivator forced himself to nod with a sigh. All right. Straight away the whole time. Lin Feng took the man and flew in that direction. Chapter 2380. Have the gods really vanished? Lin Feng took the Saint Emperor forwards. They quickly arrived at the top of a mountain and stopped. Lin Feng gazed into the distance. There was a gigantic valley below, in which there was indeed a battlefield. Smoke kept rising up in the air, and there were caves and fortresses everywhere, with tents scattered between. Many people were sitting around, looking confused. There was an invisible and intangible chi around them, which indicated they had been fighting for a very long time. In the sky was a gigantic curtain of fire. Lin Feng was still far from all this, but he could sense an enormous amount of strength. That strength wanted to pierce through his third eye, leaving him no choice. How come there are so many Saint Emperors? Asked Lin Feng. Those people all seem to be Saint Emperors. They're like me. After they came in, they weren't able to leave. Even though I've been here for a long time, many people have been here for much, much longer than me. Some of them have been here for 10,000 or even 100,000 years. The most incredible thing I've seen here was 7 generations of people who met in here. They were from the same clan, and surprisingly they all met in here. You know, at our level, if we don't get killed, we almost never die, the man replied. It reminded him of the supreme ancient pit of hell. Generations of people entering the forbidden territories and getting stuck inside. Since it's a battlefield, it must be to death, right? Why are there so many people? Asked Lin Feng. The fire word in people's third eyes is a gift offered by the spiritual being to protect people before dying. Even if their body is destroyed, they can use body capture to come back to life. Saints have incredible healing abilities. I have personally died twice. Once I was saved and brought back to life, and once I stole a body using body capture. That person looked sad and devastated. He had no way to live. He had become a puppet. Only death could save him. According to legends, there are spiritual beings' historical remains in the godly grave. But there's only a battlefield here? How come? What is the purpose? Lin Feng didn't understand. Lies. Everything is a lie in the continent of the 9 clouds, said the man firmly. I've heard many things I would have never dared believe in the past. For example, people who manage to leave usually find historical remains, and the spiritual beings allow them to leave. Many people who come here are strong fighters, and they can make the spiritual beings disappear. But do spiritual beings really disappear? The spiritual beings who made the shrines, are they alive or not? Are there only peerless saints who controlled shrines? You think that the spiritual beings still exist? Asked Lin Feng. I also used to think that the spiritual beings, or gods if you wish, had disappeared. But since I've been here, I'm sure that the 9 gods still exist. Otherwise the existence of the godly grave wouldn't be justified. Those people or deities despise us. They use us like chess pieces. They look down at us from the sky. The godly grave is a forbidden territory for us. For them, it's a game. He looked terrified, desperate, panic-stricken, and terrifyingly sad. He put his hands on his head and shouted furiously, "No, no. What's going on?" asked Lin Feng, frowning. His informer went into a frenzy, writhing in pain. The word in his third eye. Lin Feng was astonished. The word in his third eye started burning. Then it grew large enough to surround his body. No! The cultivator screamed and began to burn. Lin Feng pulled a long face and moved forwards. Ice surrounded the man, but it was useless. He burned down to ash and finally, only the gigantic word fire was left behind. He's dead. Lin Feng was grim. They were chatting about the gods, and suddenly that person had begun to burn. How mysterious. Lin Feng raised his head and looked up at the sky. Did gods really exist? According to legends, there had been a great war in the ancient times, and the gods had vanished. Was it all a lie? Was everything about the godly grave a lie too? Lin Feng looked at the ashes and bowed. If I hadn't taken you back, you wouldn't have died. I just didn't know. Lin Feng turned around and gazed into the distance. Someone came out of a fortress. He had big eyes, but looked remarkably dignified. He sensed something and looked back at Lin Feng. However, he didn't look surprised. It was just another person who had come to the godly grave. It was normal. Many people came here. Since you're here, come down. There is no exit, said that person. Lin Feng's eyes twinkled. He had no option, he jumped forwards. Lin Feng walked slowly through the valley. However, when he landed on the ground, an invisible and intangible strength crashed onto his third eye. The word fire appeared there, just like the one on the man who had just died. Is it really a god's signature? Murmured Lin Feng. If there was no god, what was the explanation? No wonder the man had suspected they were still gods after having spent such a long time here. Lin Feng walked past a middle-aged man. The man looked at Lin Feng and said, "From now on, obey me. If you disobey, you'll die." That middle-aged man was a low-level saint. Lin Feng's cultivation level was always blurry in other people's eyes. He looked ordinary. "What do I need to do?" asked Lin Feng. He didn't show how strong he was. He needed to understand what kind of place the godly grave was, and he needed to get pieces of information from other people. Nothing. Just stay with them. If there's anything to do, I'll tell you, said the middle-aged man indifferently. In the distance was an army of cultivators. Lin Feng nodded and walked over to them. Those people looked at Lin Feng apathetically, totally expressionless. Another unlucky person, a woman sighed. Lin Feng turned around and looked at her. She was wearing black clothes. She didn't look beautiful, she looked just normal, clean and simple. Lin Feng smiled and sat down next to her. She was a bit surprised, but she smiled and said, "Where are you from?" "Northwest area," said Lin Feng smiling. "Northwest area? You're from the imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds then. It's not far from the fire shrine. No wonder you came through the fire door," said the woman smiling. She stretched her hand and said, "Lin Yi." "Lin." Lin Feng's heart twitched, but he shook her hand and smiled. "Mu Feng." "By the way, Lin Yi, you said I'm from the imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds. But are there people here from other places then?" asked Lin Feng. He was curious. "I don't know. I've only been here for a dozen years. I've talked to some people, but some of them are from places I've never heard of. And I don't know whether they were from the imperial court of the continent of the 9 clouds or not." "You've been here for a short time too then. What's going on with the battles? Who are we fighting? And why?" asked Lin Feng. There had to be a reason to fight. The one who had died had told Lin Feng the gods were just playing a game, for merit and to open the gods' historical remains. "But we are just cannon fodder," said Lin Yi smiled sadly. People around looked at her, all looking devastated. What a tragedy to be there. Chapter 2381. Invasion Merit? Open the historical remains? Lin Feng didn't understand what Lin Yi meant. Were there really historical remains there? Did they even need to open them? What merit? And has anyone ever seen the historical remains? Asked Lin Feng to Lin Yi. When we enter the godly grave, depending on the entrance you use to enter, a different word is put into your third eye. When you enter through the fire entrance, the word fire appears in your third eye, which means we represent the fire spiritual being, or fire god. When people enter through the other entrances, the same happens to them. A word appears in their third eye and indicates which spiritual being they represent. When we kill people from other armies, We steal other spiritual beings' achievements like points. Regarding the historical remains, I've heard some old people say that we'll never see them personally. Linny smiled sadly. She had already resigned herself. There was nothing else to do anyway. Cultivators of the Diqi layer are under the orders of the saints. Since we are not as strong as saints, we are just cannon fodder on the battlefield. When saints are killed, the killers they get more points, it seems. Of course, only saints who have been in here for a long time know what things are actually like. All right. Lin Feng nodded. They needed military merits or points to open the historical remains, it seemed. Lin Feng now wondered, who benefited from the victories? Only the one in charge of the specific grave? Or the whole army too? Killing other people is getting more and more difficult, because everybody knows how to protect their points. They don't let their people die. Each time armies start fighting, some people are in charge of the corpses, and don't let you steal points, continued Linny. They heard some steps behind them. Lin Feng and Linny turned around. A woman had arrived. She looked heroic and valiant, graceful, elegant and charming, truly noble. She glanced over the crowd, and especially at Lin Feng and Linny. What's your name? The woman asked Lin Feng. She's the Blood Saint's daughter. She's in charge of us most of the time. She has an explosive temper. Don't infuriate her, Linny warned Lin Feng. Mu Feng, replied Lin Feng. You stand up, said the woman aggressively, pointing at Lin Feng. Lin Feng was surprised. He wasn't used to people talking to him that way, but he wasn't like in the past. He didn't have such a bad temper anymore. He was like pale clouds and a gentle breeze. He didn't want to confront her directly right now. At least, he first wanted to understand what was going on in the godly grave and how to leave. He also wanted to understand what the point of the battles between the 9 spiritual beings was. Were the gods really playing a game? Take out your jade talisman, said the woman said to Lin Feng. He took it out, and they exchanged their contact details. Linny, go and show him around so that he gets familiar with the area, said the woman, before turning around and leaving. Linny and some other people stood up and said to Lin Feng, Let's go then. We'll go and scout. Scout for what? Asked Lin Feng. It's a war. We need to scout and gather intelligence. Otherwise, the enemies will kill us easily without us even knowing how. It's very dangerous here, said Linny. The group of people headed out. Mu Feng, let me give you a map of the area. We're on the edge of the fire grave here, said Linny, transmitting a map to Lin Feng using her godly awareness. How desolate. Are there really historical remains here? Said Lin Feng. He had the feeling there was nothing here. If there are no historical remains, why would there be so many people, including saints? Interjected someone. They were 4 people, 2 men in addition to Lin Feng and Linny. They looked cold, their eyes empty and hopeless. In front of us is an area where people often hide, but our enemies usually don't hide that far, said Linny. They all released their godly awareness and inspected the mountain range. There's nobody, whispered Linny. But even if we can't see anyone with our godly awareness, we have to be careful. Many people have incredible hiding abilities. However, the probability of seeing an enemy here is not high. Lin Feng frowned, because he could sense life with his godly awareness. As expected, Linny was right. Some people are hiding here. I can only sense some dimly discernible life energy. Linny can't sense anything. It's not unusual, thought Lin Feng. Linny was a bit careless, because she was too close to their base, convinced there was no enemy this far out. Very quickly, they crossed the area. But Lin Feng didn't say anything about what he had sensed. He wanted to cross the area and see if those people who were hiding would come out at some point. How fast? At that moment, Lin Feng was startled, as the thread of life energy he had sensed moved extremely fast, and nobody had noticed it. If he hadn't been staring at it the whole time, he wouldn't have noticed it either. Lin Feng ignored the enemy and continued moving forwards. After a short time, they arrived in a vast area, and Lin Feng sensed some people's qi. I think something is going to happen, thought Lin Feng. As expected, when Lin Feng arrived at the beginning of a valley, he said to Lin Yi, That's enough for today, isn't it? Let's go back. Linny was surprised. Go back? How could things be so easy? We're scouting. There are enemies on our territory. How could we go back? Said Lin Yi. If we don't go back, we might never go back, thought Lin Feng. He whispered, there is a great danger awaiting us here, let's go back. Lin Feng turned around and started retreating. The two men frowned. Lin Yi was surprised, but she decided to trust Lin Feng and followed him. At the same time, she said telepathically, did anything happen? I sense lots of life qi, said Lin Feng. Impossible. Lin Yi's face stiffened. We're good at scouting, especially when it comes to sensing strength, and we sense nothing at all. They use saints' weapons to hide their qi, replied Lin Feng. Lin Yi's face stiffened. If that's the case, we need to go back and report it to the superiors. We need to leave if the situation is dangerous. Invaders? Asked Lin Feng. Enemies don't come here to scout. If they're really here, it's to invade us. We need to hurry up and head back. Lin Yi accelerated. The enemies remained discreet, but Lin Feng noticed that they had changed their positions. They had gotten closer to the palace. How many people do we have? How many saints? Asked Lin Feng. There are 3 saints. The strongest one is the blood saint, replied Lin Yi. Since we have saints, why don't the saints of the other side attack directly? Why do they need to use armies? It seems troublesome, said Lin Feng. He didn't understand. The saints could destroy all the saint emperors as they wished. Saints don't care about saint emperors, especially since there are so many of them. Killing saints to get points is too difficult, replied Lin Yi. If it were me, I wouldn't kill them, said Lin Feng, smiling indifferently. When they arrived back to the palace, the blood saint's daughter was surprised. She asked, how come you're back already? Mu Feng said he sensed lots of life qi which was getting closer and closer to our palace, said one of the 2 men. Lin Feng frowned. They had made him bear the responsibility. No matter what happened, nobody would blame them. And you didn't sense anything? Asked the woman. No, said the 2, shaking their heads. What about you, Lin Yi? Asked the woman. Lin Yi's face stiffened. I didn't either, but I believe Mu Feng. You have acute perceptions and you haven't sensed anything. He has just arrived and you believe him, said the woman coldly. She looked at Lin Feng. A fire whip appeared and lashed towards Lin Feng. Lin Feng released qi, but Lin Yi said to him telepathically, don't try to resist. Lin Feng stopped, and the whip crashed onto his body. His clothes were torn apart instantly, but he didn't move at all. He just glanced at her coldly. If Lin Yi hadn't told him anything, he would have killed her. I'll forgive you this time. If you do something like that again, I'll kill you, said the woman coldly, staring at Lin Feng. You're right, I'll forgive you this time too, thought Lin Feng. She would see after the enemy arrived and understand. Then, Lin Feng would settle accounts with her regarding those whiplashes. Of course, those whiplashes didn't injure Lin Feng at all. Otherwise, he would have already done something. What do the battles look like here? Lin Feng gazing into the distance. They were soon going to fight. Chapter 2382. You want to die? The blood saint's daughter left looking angry. After she left, Lin Feng said to Lin Yi, leave with me. Lin Yi was startled. Leave? In the godly grave, saint emperors who didn't stay with the saint usually died in tragic conditions. Only some terrifyingly saints dared travel alone in here. They killed as many people as they could and got points alone. According to legends, those who managed to do that had opportunities to leave. According to legends, the spiritual beings were the gods of this world. They remained at the top of the world forever. They were the ones who had created the world, the continent of the 9 clouds, the shrines, everything. There were many legends about gods. Everybody wanted to see the gods and their historical remains. Mu Feng, you're new here. You don't know much, but traveling alone in the godly grave is too dangerous, replied Lin Yi. Trust me, said Lin Feng, smiling at Lin Yi. When she saw his smile, she was astonished. This guy was so mysterious. She suddenly remembered that Lin Feng had sensed the presence of enemies. But how? You really want to leave? Asked Lin Yi. We'll leave when we're done here. I need to do some things here. But first, let's get away from the crowd, said Lin Feng. She looked at him and nodded. All right. So many years have passed, and I couldn't break through in here. Maybe I have a problem. Maybe my life is just useless here. I can gamble this time. Mu Feng, I'll stay with you. Let's go, said Lin Feng. Their figures flickered. Even though they were under the Blood Saint's orders, nobody prevented them from moving around. Very quickly, they arrived at the top of a mountain and gazed into the distance. They didn't hurry to leave. Lin Feng said, "Those people will arrive soon." Lin Yi looked at Lin Feng. He looked completely composed. And even when the Blood Saint's daughter flogged him, he looked unruffled, as if he didn't care. He didn't take her seriously. Maybe I was wrong, thought Lin Yi suddenly. She couldn't see Lin Feng's cultivation level. It seemed like he was at the same cultivation level as her. But at the same time, she couldn't be sure. Could it be? Lin Yi's mouth twitched. Could it be that Mu Feng was a saint? Time passed, the air was calm. However, Lin Feng sensed that something strange was happening. His eyes glittered. He said, "They're here." Lin Yi gazed into the distance. Were they there? Far away, a few people flew up. The Blood Saint's eyes shone. 2 other saints appeared next to him. "Who are you?" shouted the Blood Saint coldly. His voice spread far away and was as explosive as thunder. However, a million li away, a curtain of light appeared. The atmosphere was sealed. Some people are invading us? At that moment, everybody understood. When people invaded someone else's area, they sealed it first. Otherwise, other forces would come and try to steal their points while they were busy fighting. Suddenly, a terrifying qi filled the air. People flew up. It was a terrifying army. The members of the fire grave realized that only when they got closer. "They're using saints' weapons to hide their qi," swore the Blood Saint. He shouted coldly. "You didn't go and scout?" shouted the Blood Saint furiously. His daughter pulled a long face. She looked at her army, looking for Lin Feng. He had been right. How is that possible? She couldn't find him, and she couldn't see Lin Yi either. She didn't have time to think though. A terrifying strength suddenly covered the whole area. "Everybody protect your own self. We're encircled," said the Blood Saint when he sensed the immense qi. They had no choice but protect themselves this time. The enemies had a good strategy and wanted to kill them. People were panic-stricken. The Blood Saint had told the crowd to protect themselves, which meant they weren't strong enough. "Father," said the Blood Saint's daughter. She pulled a long face. If they were encircled, it meant they were doomed. "The only way to escape is to break the seal," said the Blood Saint to his daughter, as a terrifying strength surrounded her. "Father." The Blood Saint's daughter was shocked. She saw a terrifying oppressive strength surround the Blood Saint. A saint slowly arrived. She knew that the Blood Saint was protecting her, but she couldn't stay next to him. "Mu Feng," said Lin Yi. She was astonished. Their enemies had really come, like Lin Feng had said. Lin Feng looked at Lin Yi inquiringly. She said, "The area is sealed. We're stuck here. The sealed area is gigantic. Let's go and see." She looked at him, turned around, and saw the battle had already started. Very quickly, the members of the fire grave started getting slaughtered. They couldn't win, and didn't stand a chance, since the Blood Saint had given up directly. Without planning and without a strategy, the battle could only end up tragically, said Lin Yi when she saw the saints of the fire grave getting slaughtered. It was the first time she had seen such a terrifying massacre. She had seen many battles, she had seen many people die, and many enemies steal points. But today, the fire grave's members were just getting slaughtered. When cultivators died, the enemies took the fire signatures the members of the fire grave had in their third eyes. Those were the points. How macabre. They look like bloodthirsty demons, thought Lin Feng, glancing at the action. The members of the fire grave were running in all directions. Some people ran towards Lin Feng and Lin Yi. Those people just glanced at them but didn't stop. They continued running away. They had to protect themselves first. However, when they arrived at the edge of the territory, they couldn't break the seal. The Blood Saint's daughter also escaped. When she saw Lin Feng and Lin Yi, she said coldly, "Bastard! You knew that the enemies were invading our territory. Why didn't you insist?" Lin Yi was amused. The woman had refused to believe him, and now she was releasing her anger on him. The Blood Saint's daughter released a terrifying qi and took out her whip again. It turned into a fire snake and lashed out at a terrifying speed. "Be careful," said Lin Yi. However, at that moment, the Blood Saint's daughter was astonished. Lin Feng had grabbed the whip, and it instantly stopped moving. "You!" The Blood Saint's daughter pulled a long face. Lin Feng used a little bit of strength to pull it out of her hand. Then he flogged her violently. Her clothes were instantly torn apart. Lin Feng was expressionless. He flogged her again. The lash of the whip surrounded her neck, and he dragged her towards him, looking at her in an icily disdainful way without saying anything. She felt so humiliated her face had turned deathly pale. "How come he's so strong?" thought the Blood Saint's daughter. Even though she felt humiliated, she could sense he was terrifyingly strong. Lin Feng didn't need to make the slightest exertion against her, a mere saint emperor. She couldn't do anything against him. "Insolent!" shouted someone furiously at that moment. When the Blood Saint saw that Lin Feng had captured his daughter, he released a powerful qi towards him. But his opponent also attacked him at that moment, so he didn't have time to react. "Go and kill him," shouted the Blood Saint to his two partners. One of them left the battle, flying towards Lin Feng. He was a half-saint. He looked angry and released a formidable energy. "You really want to die?" shouted that person furiously. He released Celestial Dao. Lin Feng sensed an explosive fire Celestial Dao surround him. It wasn't pleasant. The man punched out in Lin Feng's direction. "No!" Lin Yi pulled a long face. Saints were too terrifying. She looked at Lin Feng. He was still standing there, and when the saint's fist bombarded his body, he didn't move, as if he had been waiting to die. The powerful fist smashed into Lin Feng. The Blood Saint's daughter smiled coldly. "How reckless! Lin Yi, you also want to die." However, at that moment, the saint's expression changed. The atmosphere around him distorted, and he couldn't control the strength around his fist. Lin Feng pointed at him, and a sharp sword emerged from his finger. With his god strength, he was an expert in close combat. Blood appeared on that cultivator's head. His eyes were wide open, he couldn't believe his eyes. The Blood Saint's daughter was astonished too. Finally, she looked truly frightened. Chapter 2383. War's Prologue. Lin Feng looked at him. As a mysterious strength emerged from his opponent's third eye. It was like that strength was trying to protect his soul. That kind of strength. Lin Feng sensed its power. "Lin Yi, can you steal points from people of the same grave as you?" asked Lin Feng. "You can't," replied Lin Yi. She was trembling. She hadn't thought Lin Feng would be so strong to the extent that he could easily kill a saint. "All right," Lin Feng nodded. His god strength replaced Celestial Dao. He released swords which pierced through his opponent's third eye, destroying his last defense, and he died. The Blood Saint's daughter's face was ghastly. She had the impression Lin Feng was a demon. He could easily kill saints. And she had flogged him before? Lin Feng studied the battle, and said to the Blood Saint's daughter, "You father is not strong enough, the enemies are much stronger. But if he's lucky he can escape alone." The Blood Saint's daughter whispered, "You're so strong, can you save those people? They were your comrades. And the intruders will kill everyone. They will not spare your life." Lin Feng looked at her and smiled evilly. "You think a lot." At that moment, the two men who had gone scouting with Lin Yi and Lin Feng ran towards Lin Feng. When they realized that Lin Feng was extremely strong, they hoped Lin Feng would protect them. "Save us," said the two, looking at Lin Feng. They both looked desperate. But Lin Feng looked at them apathetically, as if he didn't care about them. "That's your problem. Piss off," said Lin Feng coldly. The two stopped, they looking desperate and devastated. "If you don't save us, you're going to die too. After they kill us, it'll be your turn," said one of them, staring at Lin Feng coldly. "Die," said Lin Feng. His voice carried death strength. The man's face turned gray, and an enemy behind killed him and stole his word. Very quickly, a few people were standing before Lin Feng and looking at him. They didn't dare get close, and eventually withdrew. That guy could kill saints. He was dangerous. They would wait until the saints battled to deal with him. The Blood Saint was fighting fiercely. The area around him was empty, and people didn't dare get too close. The other saint of the fire grave was surrounded by two saints. The fire grave was going to suffer a crushing defeat. How tragic, thought Lin Feng when he saw all those corpses. People were getting crushed, one after another. A strong qi surrounded Lin Feng. It was the man who had been fighting against the Saint Lin Feng, had killed a moment before. Lin Feng had kind of helped him get rid of an enemy. He was inspecting Lin Feng, but he didn't seem like he wanted to attack. He had seen how scary Lin Feng was a moment before. "Your father is going to die soon," said Lin Feng. The blood saint was looking weaker and weaker. "Lin Yi, in those people's third eyes, there's the word gold. Are they from the dazzling gold shrine?" inquired Lin Feng. "I don't know. The 9 groups of the godly grave are named after the 9 shrines of the ancient world. According to legends, 9 gods created them. This place seems to be a kind of game for them, like a chess game. I don't know whether the current shrines have joined hands with them or not now. Nobody knows, I think. I don't believe the current shrines cooperate with them, though. Many people who come to the Forbidden Territories are shrines members. And what's certain is that the Fire Shrine's members usually come through the fire entrance." "I understand," said Lin Feng nodded. The other battles were already over. The saints looked at Lin Feng and the others and drew closer, especially the 3 saint invaders. On the fire grave's side, only the blood saint and Lin Feng were left. Lin Yi and the blood saint's daughter were useless now. "You don't intend to let me off?" Lin Feng said to the saints. The 3 saints remained silent. "All right," said Lin Feng. A sword appeared in his hand, brilliant and ready. An ice-cold qi filled the air. "Be careful," said the saint who had been watching Lin Feng just now. A dazzling empty space strength surged over them. Deployment spell. A saint flashed and destroyed the deployment spell. The air hummed, and the sword moved towards him. It contained pure speed strength. How fast? The man looked glum. An ancient golden shield appeared in front of him, and he retreated. The sword suddenly turned around and shot towards the 2 other saints in an eye blink. "Piss off!" shouted one of the saints. A 5-colored golden vortex appeared and surrounded the sword. But empty space lights illuminated everyone and turned into a great empty space cage. Lin Feng slowly walked towards them, as if he were taking a stroll. The golden cage in front of him disappeared, and a figure appeared. Lin Feng put his finger on the man's third eye, at the same time releasing penetrating strength. The golden signature felt strange under his finger. Anyway, Lin Feng wanted to kill the enemy and steal his word. "Destroy," said Lin Feng. His opponent collapsed and died. The strength of the word washed into Lin Feng's third eye, and he suddenly felt stronger. "How strange," Lin Feng sighed. Was that thing really a god's signature? If not, what was it? Lin Feng continued walking forwards and stealing words. The blood saint's daughter saw people die one after another in astonishment. She even felt ridiculous. She had told Lin Feng, "You want to die?" As if she could have killed him easy. Lin Feng could kill her in one glance. He was a real demon king. He was destroying the complete army of the intruders alone. Lin Yi's heart was also pounding. Lin Feng was too strong. At his level, against those people who were much weaker than him. He didn't even need to battle anymore. It wasn't a battle. He was just slaughtering people in his way. The golden curtain opened, and figure appeared in front of Lin Feng. It was a saint. Lin Feng asked, "Why do we need to steal people's points?" He sounded indifferent, natural, and at ease. However, that made him look all the more terrifying. The saint's mouth twitched. He didn't want to fight against Lin Feng. They had tried to invade this place, and because of one person the result was tragic. "I don't know," said the saint, grimacing. Lin Feng stretched out his hand and pointed at him with one finger. A god's sword emerged from his finger. It was astonishingly fast, having reached the peak of perfection. His whole hand was a sword. That saint had no time to react. His third eye broke apart and Lin Feng stole his word. Another saint was dead. The blood saint's daughter felt completely numb. She had provoked him a few times, and now she saw all these saints die in front of her. It made her tremble. For Lin Feng, all this looked normal. He looked totally calm and indifferent. Lin Feng walked past the corpse, then killed the 2 other saints because all they could tell him when he asked for more details was, "I don't know." When the deployment spells disappeared, The Blood Saint's daughter and Lenny couldn't see anyone anymore. They only saw the Blood Saint still fighting, and he looked exhausted. Lin Feng had destroyed all the others. Lin Feng looked at that fight and walked in their direction. He needed to know the secret of the grave to leave. In the outside world, a bloody battle had started between the Fortune Shrine and the Fire Shrine. A group of people from the Fortune Shrine had been slaughtered by the Fire Shrine. It didn't look very dramatic, but the consequences would be real. It would push the conflict to another level. Chapter 2384. Traveling alone. Lin Feng interrupted the Blood Saints' battle. The two of them looked at Lin Feng coldly. "You killed my people," shouted the old man who was fighting against the Blood Saint. He had a long beard, thick eyebrows, and looked dignified and majestic. He controlled gold strength, and his gold strength had reached the peak of perfection. His attacks were powerful, and his defense was incredible. He was only a bit slow. If Lin Feng hadn't distracted him a moment before by killing his comrades, he would have already killed the Blood Saint. Lin Feng stood in the air and asked them both, "Why do we need to steal people's points?" "I will tell you. When you have enough points, they turn into historical remains. If a person wins enough point on an individual basis, then they can personally receive the gods' teachings," said the old man with the thick eyebrows. "Everybody believes in the gods here." Lin Feng was stunned. The old man continued, "The gods decide the rules. If you kill people of the same level, you get more points. That's why saints don't kill saint emperors. We don't get enough points that way. It's why we make our saint emperors fight against saint emperors. You just killed many people, but you probably didn't get many points for the fire grave. You just slaughtered saint emperors, and that was actually against the rules. So the gods told you the rules personally?" "Nobody told me anything about rules," said Lin Feng, smiling coldly. I've been here for a very long time. I know better than you. It's for the balance, to avoid that extremely strong people slaughtering everyone else. Saints don't go to enemies' territories to slaughter weaker cultivators. Otherwise the saints of the other side could also go and slaughter the saint emperors on the other side. That would be useless and the historical remains would never appear," said the old man coldly. "There are 9 supreme cultivators at the head of the graves. Even if they control everything, they don't fight. They just let everything happen according to the rules." "Lin Feng, that's true. Saints never attack saint emperors or really rarely. That's why saint emperors are just cannon fodder, because there are too many of them. According to the rules, we do have to kill a sufficient number of saint emperors to open the historical remains. There aren't many saints, but they can only fight against other saints, and killing saints isn't as easy. As you become stronger, it gets more complicated to kill them," Lenny told Lin Feng telepathically. Lin Feng believed in the gods more and more. Those rules created a real balance. Saint emperors were cannon fodder. The 9 supreme entities controlled everything, but never fought because there weren't many people who had the same cultivation level as them. One person killing billions easily was useless. Only killing a sufficient number of people of the same level was rewarding. If your cultivation level is the same as mine, a low-level saint, and you kill everyone, you will get very few points. First, because it's against the rules, and second, you will probably die." The old man and the Blood Saint released their chi to surround Lin Feng. Very few. Lin Feng was surprised. When he had killed the saints, he had sensed an incredible strength. Was that a few? Were there really rules here? But then, since he was at the god level, what was his cultivation level? If he had to compare himself with normal cultivators, he could be compared to a low-level saint. But his cultivation and his techniques were completely different from other people's. He could easily destroy half-saints. His fighting abilities were at least a rank higher. Relying on various methods, he could compete with low-level saints. With terrifying saints' weapons, his fighting abilities were even scarier. So he was probably considered a half-saint, and in terms of fighting abilities a low-level saint. That was the particularity of his cultivation, his own god level. To Lin Feng, it was probably the last cultivation level he would have. It also meant one thing. Nothing was impossible for him anymore. He had to study, and he would gradually become stronger and stronger. His strength had no limit. Pathetic, said Lin Feng. The old man and the blood saint were startled, watching Lin Feng coldly. They were pathetic. I've been here for a short time, and you tell me there are rules. And since there are rules, why don't you let saint emperors travel alone? You are saints and you abuse your power to control them. You don't go and fight against enemies alone, because you are incompetent. You know you can't kill people of the same cultivation level. But that way, even if someday you had enough points and the historical remains appeared, there would be many saints there. What would you do then? Said Lin Feng calmly. You know what would happen, but because you are incompetent, you try to protect your lives by using other people. You are just afraid and weak. The old man's face stiffened. Lin Feng's words were like a knife stabbing his heart. So what? When you come into the godly grave, you can never go out. Even if you don't die here. Even if people in the outside world see that your jade talisman isn't broken, they don't know this place is just like a prison. If you're not strong enough, how can you travel alone? How can you kill so many strong opponents? Do you know how dangerous this place is? Challenged the old man coldly. So you admit there are stronger cultivators, said Lin Feng. The old man was surprised and said, Of course, but it doesn't mean you are one of them. Lin Feng stretched out his hand, and a god sword appeared. He flew up, and an extremely heavy energy descended from the sky. His sword was as heavy as a gigantic axe, containing overwhelming energy. He struck the seal, and cracks appeared, breaking sounds spread out. The sword streaked across the sky again, and shattered the seal. When you face people who are terrifyingly strong, and whose cultivation level is much higher than yours, you feel weak. You have the impression you will never be as strong as them. You find them mysterious. But those people used to be weak too. Everyone goes through the same things, independent of your cultivation level. It's a universal rule. All in all, we are all ordinary people who have different levels and different lives. Lin Feng turned around and looked at the blood saint and the old man. When he wasn't a saint, he used to think saints were incredible. He used to think of them as gods. Now he realized that being a saint wasn't such a big deal after all. When you're weak, you cower. When you have strong beliefs, you persevere. And then someday you become strong enough. And when you reach a certain level, if you stop believing, you stop breaking through. You are saints. It proves that you used to be extremely determined in the past. But now, Lin Feng stopped talking. He was muttering to himself. Even if there were gods in this world, Lin Feng could definitely become as strong as them. He could become a real god. He was still extremely determined. Linny, let's go, Lin Feng said to her. Linny had heard everything. She was astonished. She had the impression Lin Feng and her belonged to two different worlds, that she would never be able to catch up with him. Linny nodded, and Lin Feng took her away. The blood saint and the old man didn't prevent them from leaving. Lin Feng's voice was still resonating in their heads. After a very long time, the old man sighed and looked at them in the horizon, saying, I've been in the godly grave for 70,000 years. Back in the days, I used to be extremely determined. I was young. I used to hope it would never change. At that moment, the old man's heart was filled with admiration. He hoped Lin Feng would continue being determined. There's a building here. I'll put you there. They will take care of you, all right? Said Lin Feng to Lin Yi. Lin Yi suddenly looked low-spirited, sad, and disappointed. All right, Lin Yi agreed. She was extremely weak compared to Lin Feng. They both flew in the sky. Someone flew up to meet them. He sensed a terrifying qi and said to Lin Feng, What do you want here? Her home was destroyed. I have to go. Can your people take care of her? Asked Lin Feng. His qi was overwhelming and filled the air. The man nodded. All right, I'll find a place for her. I'm off, said Lin Feng, leaving. Lin Yi gazed into the distance. She didn't want to be away from Lin Feng. She admired him so much. Where is he going? Asked that saint to Lin Yi. He's going to other places to get points alone, whispered Lin Yi. The saint was astonished and started trembling. Lin Yi continued walking away. She didn't need to ask Lin Feng. She knew what he wanted to do. Chapter 2385, Traveling and Killing. According to legends, the 9 graves of the godly grave were created by 9 gods. According to other legends, the godly grave was a place where they rested in peace. But no matter what the truth was, what was sure was that the 9 graves were ancient places, and were named after the 9 shrines of the ancient times. The fire grave, dazzling gold grave, earth grave, ice and snow grave, life grave, empty space grave, starlit grave, countless grave and time grave. The members of the shrines which still existed went to the areas which corresponded to their own shrine. The fire shrine's members went to the fire grave. The members of the empty space shrine went to the empty space area. People who weren't members of shrines chose graves, which corresponded to what they were looking for. The 9 graves were particular and contained all sorts of chi. Their borders were in constant flux. The 9 graves were circular, and all had a common border. From that common border, they could access all other graves. But that place was also very dangerous. Nobody dared stay there for too long, except for a few extremely saints. The reason was that that area was the best place to win points. And it was also the best place to go to the other graves. At night in the godly grave there was a moon too. The graves and the common border were peaceful. Someone gazed into the distance. According to the map, after that forest will be the border area. I've heard it is a chaotic area where there are many extremely strong saints. They all like to go there to get points, thought Lin Feng. The fire grave was gigantic. It took Lin Feng 7 days to arrive at his present location. He had also learned a lot about the godly grave on his way, which is why he had decided to go to the chaotic border area. At that moment, Lin Feng's cultivation level was clearly visible. He was a half-saint. That way, extremely strong saints wouldn't try to kill him, because it would be pointless. They wouldn't get any points by killing him. Lin Feng moved further along. It was almost impossible to hear his steps. His perceptions were acute. He could easily sense the movements of the grass and the trees. Nothing could escape his perceptions. Even if no saint attacks me, I have to be very careful, thought Lin Feng. Therefore he walked slowly and silently. There's someone. Lin Feng sensed that someone had appeared behind him. The word fire was written on that person's third eye. He was from this grave. The man didn't pose a threat to Lin Feng, so he continued walking. What a strange tree. Lin Feng noticed a gigantic tree with many branches and leaves. It was extremely thick. In that unpopulated area, the tree had grown without being disturbed. Its chi was extremely heavy. It was such a thick tree that a drop of water couldn't have passed through its branches. Lin Feng walked up to the foot of the tree and stopped. He remained motionless. He could sense something. Suddenly, the temperature dropped drastically, as if the earth and sky had been about to freeze. Lin Feng had the impression his blood and soul were going to freeze. That chill came from someone's soul, it seemed. There's someone. Lin Feng's eyes suddenly flared with light. He condensed God's strength in his eyes and glanced around. An illusion was moving towards Lin Feng extremely quickly. That person suddenly stopped, and their expression suddenly changed for some reason. Lin Feng couldn't miss that opportunity. He suddenly flew up, raised his hands, and millions of death stamps emerged from his fingers. They slammed into his attacker, whose face turned gray as he died. Drops of liquid fell onto Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't notice in particular, but he had a bad premonition. More drops fell from the tree. Lin Feng suddenly attacked it. The gigantic tree exploded, however. At the same time, millions of drops fell onto Lin Feng. The leaves of the tree released a dangerously sharp sword energy, blotting out the sky and covering the earth as well. It turned into millions of swords as a figure emerged from the tree and released vines towards Lin Feng. They were very close. Lin Feng couldn't dodge, and the vines constricted him. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Lin Feng was astonished. The saint he had killed had ended up in a tragic way, but he hadn't sensed that there was a powerful cultivator in the tree. Lin Feng sensed that the drops of liquid were powerful. Their purpose was to crush his internal organs. Luckily, he had only absorbed a few drops. The one hiding in the tree had hidden his chi a moment before, and the drops of liquid were deadly like time bombs. The tree man wanted to kill them both at the same time to get more points. He could have attacked one of them individually, but he was patient. A sharp sword made of tree parts shot towards Lin Feng's third eye. Illusion, shouted Lin Feng coldly. The atmosphere around them changed. Lin Feng was still constricted in vines, but he was in a different world now. Lin Feng spat out a sharp sword and tore apart the tree. The enemy flashed towards him and raised his fist. The vines turned into sharp wires which tried to pierce through Lin Feng's skin. Millions of water drops fell towards Lin Feng. Illusion! Lin Feng shouted angrily again. An illusion appeared inside his illusion. Then he fused dream and illusion strength together, with a deployment spell. His opponent now had the impression he was fighting against two Lin Fengs. One who was still wrapped up in vines, and the other one was flying towards him. He didn't understand what was happening. Celestial constriction, shouted the saint coldly. Celestial Tao appeared above the tree, and millions of vines appeared and descended from the sky, they surrounding the two Lin Fengs. This guy is a wood cultivator, and his cultivation is similar to a life shrine cultivator. But the members of the life shrine try to save people, whereas this one is an assassin. He tries to kill people without being noticed. He's very dangerous. What an incredible strength, said Lin Feng. If this saint dared hide here, it meant he was incredible strong. The one Lin Feng had killed was strong too, but he had died. I'll kill you even in illusions, stated the cultivator coldly. Two extremely sharp empty space wooden spears descended from the sky and lunged towards the two Lin Fengs. Instantly, the illusions broke apart, and the real world reappeared. His illusion is broken, is he dead? The man glanced around, but couldn't see Lin Feng's corpse. Oh no! His expression changed drastically. He sensed danger coming from behind. A sword moved towards him silently without him noticing, even as it penetrated into his head and third eye. Sorry, we're still in an illusion, said Lin Feng indifferently. The real world reappeared for real. It was nighttime, and that person's third eye was bleeding. He looked stunned. He didn't even know how he had died. He had spent 8,000 years in here, hiding and hunting. He had won so many points, and now he was dead. His points went to his killer. His word moved to Lin Feng's third eye. Lin Feng sensed an incredible strength flowing through him. You don't just win a fixed amount of points, you also get your enemy's points, he mused. Of course, when people died, the points they had accumulated had to go somewhere. So when they were killed, their killers actually got them. Most people couldn't kill cultivators like the tree guy. Only people extraordinarily strong like Lin Feng could. After collecting the tree guy's word, Lin Feng stole the word of the other cultivator he had just killed. That man also had many points, but he had died even more tragically. Lin Feng could hear some sounds around, and he knew that many people were hiding in the darkness. After having seen his fight, many of them walked away. If I kill low-level saints, how many points will I get? He wondered initially. Lin Feng didn't intend to kill saints in the godly grave. He wanted to seal them in his small world and use them. But after he had heard about the rules, he had changed his strategy, mostly because he wanted to get points. He wanted to see if he'd be able to make historical remains appear. He was convinced he'd succeed. Lin Feng continued hearing sounds around him, and he felt even more enthusiastic. He continued walking towards the edge of the central area, the most chaotic place, where there were many saints. Chapter 2386. Permi thought the night was gloomy. One step and one could die anytime. Lin Feng was walking slowly. He gradually drew closer to the border area, and finally arrived. The night was eerily silent and scary. The area was gigantic though, and some people might be fighting in the distance, but he couldn't sense their presence. Surprisingly, some people set up camps here. I wonder if there are traps too, he observed, glancing around. There were many tents. He continued walking and saw a mountain range. It was a hilly area. There were many places where to hide. Even though Lin Feng had good hiding abilities, he didn't hide, because he wanted people to see him. He wanted to fight. He wanted people to believe he was prey, and that way, he'd find his own prey. Even though hiding and killing people without getting noticed was safer, it also took too much time. Lin Feng didn't want to stay in this place for hundreds of years, or more like the people he had met. He didn't even dare think about such an eventuality. Lin Feng wanted to get points as quickly as possible and find the historical remains. But even though Lin Feng didn't hide, nobody attacked him. The first reason was that the area was extremely vast, so people were hiding everywhere. The second reason was that when there was a fight, many saints came out. So before an actual battle burst out, nobody was willing to show themselves, unless they were sure they could kill their opponent in one strike. Just like the tree guy who had thought he could kill two people at once. Lin Feng raised his head and looked at the moon, seeing a black shadow there. A cultivator was running, he was being chased by something. After that, Lin Feng saw a few cultivators behind him, streaking across the sky. Lin Feng suddenly turned into a beam of light and disappeared from there. After Lin Feng left, something moved on the ground, where he was standing a few seconds before. An earth illusion appeared. A man was lying on the ground there now. He looked after Lin Feng angrily. He had just gotten ready to attack, and now his plan had failed. "You're lucky," hissed the saint coldly, and he fused together with the ground again. How fast? Lin Feng continued flying quickly. He realized that these enemies were extremely fast. He managed to catch up and noticed that the one in the front was wearing black clothes, so it was difficult to see him at night. If the moon hadn't silhouetted him, Lin Feng wouldn't have noticed him. Those who were chasing him had black wings and were as fast as lightning. They kept getting closer and closer to the one in the front. Finally, the escapee stopped at the top of a mountain. There was nowhere to hide there, so nobody could attack by surprise. He turned around and looked at those who were chasing him coldly. "It's him." Lin Feng was astonished. It was him again. The escapee was Chu Chunxiu. Back then, he had been to the supreme ancient pit of hell, and he had come out alive somehow. Then Lin Feng had seen him in the canonization area. There, Chu Chunxiu, Saint Emperor Freeze, and Lin Feng had managed to reach the canonization mountain. After that, they had chosen different paths. Saint Emperor Freeze had decided to apply the rules of nature to his own body to return to the source, and then had become a saint. Chu Chunxiu had decided to go against the celestial Tao. He didn't believe in the powers of the skies, yet he had become a saint too. Lin Feng had continued on his God path. He had put distance between the celestial Tao of the outside world and his own life. A long time had passed, and Lin Feng had ended up in the godly grave by following Qiongyu. Now Chu Chunxiu was here too. Did Chu Chunxiu intend to go to all the forbidden territories? He had been to Ganji's time forbidden territory, then to supreme ancient pit of hell, and now he was in the godly grave. Chu Chunxiu suddenly turned around and looked at Lin Feng. He looked evil and terrifying, like a demonic warlord. He had decided to go against the will of heaven to become a saint, so he was definitely terrifying strong. Lin Feng guessed that Chu Chunxiu recognized him from the look in his eyes. What is he hiding? He's so mysterious, thought Lin Feng. He had turned into Mu Feng, but Chu Chunxiu could still recognize him. However, Chu Chunxiu then looked at his pursuers again and said, "Celestial Rock Clan, I want your wills." A strong wind started blowing as the saints in front of him opened their wings. Their wings were as sharp as swords and contained celestial Tao. Suddenly, lights flashed and fused together with celestial Tao. The saints understood speed Tao. Their speed was incredible, their attacks ruthless. After breaking through to the Sheng layer, they had understood celestial Tao, and their speed Tao had become speed celestial Tao. It had reached the peak of perfection. They moved invisibly fast. A terrifying sound spread in the air, as if extremely sharp energies were lacerating Chu Chunxiu. However, only his clothes turned to pieces. They raised their heads and saw Chu Chunxiu standing in the air, like a warlord who despised the whole world. "A celestial rock can lacerate the atmosphere," said Chu Chunxiu coldly. He raised his hand and released a terrifyingly explosive intent. His celestial Tao swept out and carried everything away, before turning into a vortex. More lights flashed. The celestial rocks could cut the air. But that wasn't enough against Chu Chunxiu. He shouted furiously, "Come out!" His energies could destroy celestial Tao. A celestial rock appeared, screaming angrily. Chu Chunxiu's will penetrated into his third eye. A vortex appeared around his hand, and he absorbed his enemy. Chaotic celestial Tao. Lin Feng frowned. The saint had turned into a celestial rock and had used a teleportation technique, hiding in the celestial Tao. The saints of the empty space area were joining hands. A gigantic tree was destroyed. A terrifying empty space strength chased after him. Lin Feng's heart twitched. There were at least 3 low-level saints chasing him. You can't escape, the voice declared. Celestial Tao descended from the sky. Suddenly, marks appeared and started intertwining. A terrifying empty space cage appeared on the ground. Lin Feng suddenly stopped. He was in the gigantic cage. In front of him, someone was slowly walking towards him and entered the cage. On his left and above him, 2 other cultivators arrived as well. There were 3 cultivators around him. Are you a low-level saint or a half-saint? If you're a low-level saint, you're a low-level saint who pretends to be a half-saint to kill half-saints. You must not have obtained many points. You slaughtered our half-saints, I can't tolerate that. You're too insolent, declared the cultivator above him coldly. And I'm a half-saint and you're 3 low-level saints. You don't think that's insolent? Asked Lin Feng coldly. However, we can't be sure you're really a half-saint. Even if you're really a half-saint, your fighting abilities are incredible. You will just kill off my comrades. Not many saints come to the godly grave. The empty space grave is just a small area. Therefore, we'll kill you anyway. We can't let you act like that here. Since you say so, why do you waste time talking? Just act, said Lin Feng indifferently. Sword lights flashed. God's sword appeared in Lin Feng's hand. He flashed towards a low-level saint, surrounded by God's strength. A vortex appeared around his sword, dust and sand flying around, and disappearing in the vortex. The hurricane grew larger and larger. Many small vortexes appeared around the sword. It absorbed all the chi around. A saint's technique. That sword is connected to his saint's technique. It contains a powerful intent. The 3 saints were astonished. That saint's technique was absolutely dreadful. It absorbed everything around it. The 3 low-level saints were astonished. The vortexes were growing more and more dangerous. If they condensed together, their absorbing power would become even more unstoppable. At that moment, Lin Feng was the world around him. He was a god. His strength was increasing constantly. The 3 low-level saints released golden empty space strength. Reality began to bend. A celestial curtain appeared and turned into sharp dazzling swords. If they attacked at the same time, their attack was going to be impressive. One of them jumped into empty space and disappeared. The other one released empty space cages and fused together with them, turning into a celestial cage which could oppress everything. The atmosphere was ready to explode. However, Lin Feng seemed unaffected, continuing to move forwards. He had no choice. He had to kill someone to avoid being the victim of a group attack. He didn't know whether these 3 people had that power or not. Finally, Lin Feng flashed forwards and attacked. At the same time, his opponent's empty space sword shot towards him. It was as if that attack could have killed dozens of saints at once. Slash! Lin Feng was still condensing strength in his sword, but he didn't attack. The attacks of the other 2 also arrived. Cages oppressed him as the other one reappeared, holding an empty space hammer, which arced towards Lin Feng's head. It looked extremely heavy. Lin Feng's eyes closed. He was God in his world. He could clearly sense the hammer, the swords, and the cages. Maybe he could destroy those 3 attacks if he released his own attack at the perfect time. But that way, his sword attack wouldn't be as powerful, and would be destroyed too. At the same time, he would miss the opportunity to attack one of them. He was already surrounded, so the situation was dangerous. Lin Feng had to act like he was an outsider. He had to observe the battle from every point of view. He had to be omniscient like a god. Wuxia uses slowness strength in such conditions. At my cultivation level, and with my god strength, I'm strong, but speed strength is important too. Since I'm the god of my own body, I should use god speed and slowness strength, thought Lin Feng. He was focused and could understand cultivation from all sorts of perspectives. Speed and slowness is a kind of intent. I have an absolute control over my own attacks. I can't really influence my enemy's attacks. But since I can use my God strength in the outside world, there's nothing impossible, thought Lin Feng. Chu Chunxiu went against the will of heaven, against nature. I don't follow the will of heaven, but I don't go against it either. I am just my own God, I control everything. Lin Feng opened his eyes and said, slow. A mysterious celestial Tao intent surrounded the area, and everything slowed down. Of course, Lin Feng had just comprehended that kind of strength. He couldn't make them slow down like some cultivators who were familiar with it. A master of slowing could make everything around them stop. But it was enough. Chapter 2388. Understanding speed in dangerous circumstances. A small difference could make a huge difference, especially at such cultivation levels. If Lin Feng understood speed and slow celestial Tao, it would be great, but that wasn't the case. He was already a saint, and he suddenly understood slow intent, which he fused together with his own God celestial Tao. As his enemies drew closer, they also moved slower. However, when a cultivator controlled slow strength to the extreme, it wasn't slow strength anymore. It became time strength. Lin Feng had just thought of that, and that made the situation dangerous for the enemies. He glanced at them, suddenly turning around, and his God sword suddenly cut towards the one who had the hammer. That cultivator was astonished. Even though they were slower, they still controlled their attacks. His hammer disappeared and turned into empty space lights around him. He suddenly became indistinct, as if he were about to disappear. But Lin Feng's sword was extremely fast and contained absorbing strength, so it started absorbing celestial Tao. The saint's figure began to warp as the sword appeared in front of him, and the absorbing strength sucked him in. Lin Feng didn't try to get his word. His God sword absorbed the man entirely. The sword hummed harshly, and Lin Feng continued attacking. His slow intent disappeared. A terrifying amount of sharp empty space, sword moved towards him, and the empty space cage continued oppressing him. Get back, warned that cultivator frantically. However, his friend was already too close, and couldn't move back. He waved his hand, and his empty space cages continued oppressing Lin Feng. In front of him, the cages sealed the area to prevent Lin Feng's swords from driving forwards. Musical crackling sounds greeted that effort. The cages shattered, and he was hurled back. Slow. A terrifying slow strength filled the air, and everything slowed down. Die, said that saint annoyed. Lin Feng stayed focused. His sword wasn't affected at all. His God strength surrounded the man. The man raised his hand, and celestial Tao deployment marks appeared and started interweaving. They turned into a beautiful pattern. Lin Feng put his fingers on the pattern, and his sword smashed into it hard. His opponent felt the danger, but Lin Feng moved fast, even faster than a moment before. His sword even seemed to contain speed strength. They couldn't follow him with their eyes. The man glared at him, staring, scared he'd miss something. Die, spat the man when Lin Feng appeared in front of him. He spat out a golden strength directly at Lin Feng. Since Lin Feng was moving towards him so fast he couldn't dodge. Slow, shouted Lin Feng furiously. They were very close to one another, so his enemy's attack instantly slowed down. Slow, 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 said Lin Feng. He released God's celestial Tao, looking like a peerless god in that instant. The enemy's golden energies slowed down, but they were still very fast. Lin Feng released deployment lights, which surrounded the empty space strength. Lin Feng's third eye crackled, blood dripped down. The golden strength arrived in front of him. Die! Lin Feng's sword swept out as he released slowness energy all around himself. It was like time was about to stop. Dazzling lights surrounded Lin Feng, and he disappeared. The golden strength punched through, but Lin Feng wasn't there anymore. No! Lin Feng's enemy wasn't as lucky. God's sword pierced through his head and killed him, before returning to Lin Feng. Lin Feng's third eye was bleeding, but he quickly recovered. His life strength was incredible. The golden attack which had injured him had been truly formidable. If he had reacted a little bit slower, he would have died. As expected, against any low-level saint, I have to be extremely careful. I have my God's sword, but other people also have precious items. That golden attack was a powerful golden lightning, an item he could use anytime. If I hadn't reacted fast enough, I would be dead already. Actually, he had been very lucky. If he hadn't understood slow and speed strength during that battle, he couldn't have won. Even though he could also use the great empty space technique to disappear, it would not have been enough against the enemy's precious item, the gold lightning. Lin Feng turned around to fight against the last one. But that man had already started escaping when he saw Lin Feng kill his comrade. He knew that if he didn't escape, Lin Feng would kill him. He also guessed that if Lin Feng had not understood slow and speed strength at the last minute, they would have had a chance. But now it was too late. Lin Feng heard more whistling sounds and reacted instantly. His figure flickered, and he left the empty space grave. If too many extremely strong saints surrounded him, he wouldn't stand a chance. I'm getting close to the border area. Lin Feng didn't dare fly, sticking to the ground. He didn't want people to notice him. He sensed some explosive chi behind him, and knew that some people were looking for him. Escape, he thought, accelerating. He had come to the empty space area to steal points, and had drawn people's attention, even though he proceeded with the greatest care. He had ended up encircled. Now he had to flee. Finally, Lin Feng arrived in the border area, but didn't stop until he found a mountain dwelling to hide in. He cast a great deployment spell outside of the cave to protect himself. He needed to practice cultivation. Lin Feng sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes. Very quickly, he was in his own world. Lin Feng could control everything in his own world. In his body's world, he was the celestial Tao, he was God. Many trees appeared around Lin Feng and emitted rustling sounds. Leaves floated in the wind. Suddenly, his entire world became slower. The leaves in the wind slowed down too. Chapter 2389. Giant God's clan. Time didn't stop because of one person. Time rolled on and 2 months passed. Lin Feng was still studying, still in his own world. He practiced a lot, his speed had increased a lot. His attacks were faster, but it wasn't the kind of speed he was trying to achieve. He didn't want to make things faster using wind or empty space strength, or agility techniques or intent. It wasn't celestial Tao intent either. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong direction. When I fought against those 3 people, they attacked me. I wanted to slow them down. Their attacks were quick, but then everything became clear. Accordingly, I managed to react quickly, but that's a consequence of the slow strength. Speed and slowing constitute a kind of Tao, he thought. He was trying to calm down. He was in his world, and gazed off into the distance. In the sky, clouds appeared and slowly drifted along. Suddenly, the whole became slower, including the clouds in the sky. What if that was the world's real speed? Thought Lin Feng suddenly. He was the god of his world. He could decide everything. He could also set the speed of his world. The real speed before was faster than the slowed down one. Fastness and slowness were not absolute, they were relative. The concept was very simple. Fast, said Lin Feng, smiling excitedly. Suddenly, the clouds drifted faster, moving at their original speed again, and then even faster. Everything I tried before was useless, thought Lin Feng, laughing at himself. Sometimes when you don't understand something, you look in the wrong direction. It's like when you're walking. If you choose the wrong direction, you can walk further and further. You'll be exhausted, but you won't find the right way. All you have to do is turn around and find the right way. That rule actually applied to everything in the world. Now I have God's strength, which allows me to create saints' attacks. I also understand speed and slowing. Even if I don't use saints' weapons, I should be able to kill low-level saints easily. If I manage to improve my God strength, I'll become even stronger. Lin Feng was feeling impatient at that moment. His fighting abilities were already great. If he managed to break through, he'd become even more terrifying. Each level was like another world. If he could make his God strength increase, it would be perfect. But he couldn't control that. He had to let nature take its course. When conditions were ripe, success was naturally achieved. Lin Feng left his world and took a deep breath. Speed and slowing were different from all the other kinds of strength he had studied before. It was a complement to his cultivation, and could influence his attacks and weaken his enemies. Slowing and speeding up could be considered one concept. And by studying that one concept, his strength had increased a lot. He had brought his fighting abilities to the next level. If he had to fight against the 3 low-level saints again, he would crush them in the blink of an eye. They would not pose a threat to him anymore at all. I don't know how many points I have, but how many more will I need before receiving a spiritual being's instructions? He wondered. He removed his deployment spell and left the cave, glancing up at the move. Lin Feng suddenly felt paralyzed. A powerful empty space strength surrounded him. The atmosphere around him seemed to be frozen. He could barely move. A person in black clothes appeared in front of him. He had noticed that someone had cast a deployment spell on that cave. Therefore, he hadn't tried to go in, he had just waited. He had been waiting for 2 months and finally Lin Feng was out. He wanted to kill Lin Feng in one strike. Lin Feng knew that a strong empty space attack was constricting him. The empty space strength contained celestial Tao. He saw a hand moving towards his head. Lin Feng grunted coldly. If that hand hit his head, his skull would explode. God! Lin Feng released God's strength around himself. No celestial Tao could pierce through it. He could use his God's strength around himself. His enemy was a half-saint, but his celestial Tao was useless against Lin Feng. Actually, Lin Feng could kill him easily, but he didn't. He waited for the hand to get closer and said, "Slow." The hand slowed down. His enemy's expression changed. Faster, faster. How come his attack was so slow? His hand attack was moving at 1/5 of its normal speed. How scary. It was getting dangerous for him now. Slow. Lin Feng's God's celestial Tao moved. He wanted to see how much he could slow down the attacker. Nothing the man did could escape from Lin Feng's perceptions. That half-saint wanting to fight against him came down to committing suicide. It's even slower. How is that possible? The man's face paled as he drew closer to Lin Feng. They were 3 meters away from one another. It was nothing. In normal times he would have needed a millisecond to reach Lin Feng. But at that moment, he was as slow as a snail. It would take him 20 minutes to move over 3 meters. "Please spare my life, master," shouted Lin Feng's opponent. He couldn't die, he was going to die. How could Lin Feng spare his life? "It's over," said Lin Feng. He pointed a finger at the man and millions of death stamps shot out. He also condensed God death strength inside them. "Fast," said Lin Feng, and his attack moved even faster. The man was already gray and died instantly. Lin Feng had 1 more points easily. His figure flickered. He flew up into the night sky. The moon was out, and it was a bit cold. Lin Feng rose up into the clouds. He landed at the top of a mountain where people could easily see him. He had become much stronger. He could easily kill half-saints. He didn't need to hide in the border area. He was waiting for opponents now.